Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure to grab yourself a snack and coffee as we are about to begin our program shortly. Make your way to your seats, please, as we are about to begin our program shortly.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. How are you? Thanks for being here. If everyone can get their snacks and take their seats, we're about to get started. I am so pleased to be here today. Thank you so much. And I want to welcome both our live stream audience as well as all of you who are able to be here in person. The summit today will focus on the theme of empowering eaters in support of the health and well-being of future generations, which is really a theme that I love. My name is Nierenberg, and I am president and co-founder of Food Tank. We are a research and advocacy organization that really is devoted to highlighting stories of hope and success in our food and agriculture systems, both internationally and domestically. And we do this with the aim to inspire, motivate, and ultimately activate positive transformation in how we produce and consume food. We are so excited to be here in Atlanta for this summit in support of the National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. This is our first summit in Georgia. I'm so happy to be here. And I want to thank our partners, who I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. The Biden-Harris administration has really called on all of us as farmers, researchers, advocates, philanthropists, nurses and doctors, business leaders, local policymakers, and eaters all across the country to take action to end hunger, reduce diet-related diseases and health disparities, and improve the well-being of communities. As you will hear today, we all have a role to play in this very, very important work. And I want to thank Kellyanne Blazek and Will McIntee, who are with us from the White House Office of Public Engagement. Their leadership to advance the national strategy has been absolutely inspiring. They are true public servants, and it has been an honor and a privilege to work with them. I also want to thank our incredible partners, our host, Emory University, including the Emory University Center for Ethics, and especially Dr. Jonathan Crane. Please give him a round of applause. And a huge thank you to our partner, Spelman College, especially Dr. Kimberly Jackson. Give her a round of applause, please. I love Dr. Jackson. They are both forces of nature in the food and agriculture movement, and this event is only possible thanks to their support and encouragement. I also want to take a moment to quickly thank some of our other wonderful partners, including Bon Appetit Management Company, Ahold Delhaize USA, Nature's Fynd, Oatly, Oatly and Bonterra Organic Estates, who have supported today's event and our reception, which I hope everyone in this room will stay for. The food in the back is beautiful and spectacular, so take your time and go back there. It will be beautiful again later in the day. Round of applause for that, that's great. So this afternoon, you will hear from farmers, researchers, nutritionists, policy experts, nonprofit and business leaders, and many other stakeholders. We have a very packed agenda, and to make sure we end on time, and we will because all food tank events end on time, the discussions today will be very fast-paced and dynamic. If I cut panels short, no matter how vibrant they are, I hope you will understand and forgive me later. You will also have a chance to continue today's discussions by connecting with the speakers and attendees during the breakout sections and also at the reception, again, where we will have delicious food and drink to enjoy. So please, please stay. Please also make sure to step out for water and bio breaks or to move your legs because we don't have breaks built in, and we make sure to do that so that the live stream audience can have a great experience as well as all of you in the room. And I hope everyone will share today's conversations using the hashtag #FoodTank and the handle #FoodTank on all social media platforms. We'll be replying to your comments throughout the day in real time. I'm now excited to invite to the stage Dr. Ravi Bellamkonda, the Provost of Emory University. So please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Danny. I'm delighted that you have chosen our beautiful campus for your first Georgia event. Distinguished guests, welcome to Emory. We've chosen a beautiful, beautiful day to be on our campus. It's like this every day of the year, particularly when the students are throwing the Frisbee around. It's actually very beautiful to be here. We're really honored to host this event. It's a very meaningful event for us. All of you distinguished guests in the audience, those of you watching online, it's just a joy to be here. Particular welcome to guests from the White House, our wonderful academic institutions, including Spelman, many agencies and organizations across the country gathering here. In particular, the Emory agencies that Danny alluded to, the Center for Ethics, Campus Life, Spelman College, of course, and Food Tank. At Emory, we have this word that you'll hear a lot if you spend like 5 minutes here, and and we're very proud of this because it speaks to Emory's ethos, and we call that flourishing. And in flourishing, we find an aspirational state for us as a community, for our students, our faculty, our staff, and also for all of us as human beings. And by that we mean a certain deep sense of success that nourishes the whole person, not just the professional success of our people. But then we can't talk of flourishing in the absence of nourishing that comes from food and other ways in which we are nourished as human beings. And indeed, we are not, as a campus, immune to this ourselves, to food insecurity. We have mechanisms run by campus dining, actually, to have a food bank that we supply food. It's stocked, and it's actually used quite a bit, and we're trying to understand the mechanics of that. And we have student organizations that go into food waste and trying to eliminate food waste by working through what's called the Emory food chain. We also do a lot of research in this space, as you can imagine, and both in terms of access. Many of you know of the study from our Rawal School of Public Health. Megan Winkler and Angela Zhang found that majority black neighborhoods, and no surprise, have access issues when it comes to nutritious food that's affordable. In fact, the food that's accessible is not that healthy and cheap. And so there's a surveillance report that Emory is proud to put out to help us understand this issue and shine a light on such topics so we can begin through policy and other interventions address these things. One of the solutions to such things might be, you would think, to create community gardens, and indeed the West Side Gardens is an example of that. But even in those settings, Eri Saikawa's work has shown that there's increased lead in the soil there, and due to her research and shining a light on that, we've been able to have interventions that replaced a lot of the soil, so there is local efforts to have healthy food. Stepping back, speaking of Georgia, we're a $70 billion agriculture industry here in Georgia, And we all can witness climate change. And so we have Emily Burkfield trying to develop predictive models of how growing crops is going to be impacted in the age of climate change, telling us what areas are susceptible, in what ways, what kinds of crops, what practices can be informed. And we believe this will be a very useful tool for us as we plan for food security on a planet where the number of people is continuing to increase. And then lastly, of course, it's not just these issues, but we have people like Usha Ramakrishnan in our Global Health Institute thinking about food, and I know there are sessions on this today, thinking about it from a nutritional perspective, omega-3 fatty acids, how to look at maternal health, and things like this. And we all know about rice and vitamin A and blindness. So there are many variations of that theme where we can think of food as nourishment for overall health of our planet. So I'll end my welcome remarks with the word that I started with, which is flourishing. We're ambitious for the world, and we should be, and food is a core to our being, and I'm really delighted to have this conversation today. So thank you all for participating. Welcome to Emory again, and I look forward to the sessions today. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle.
I do feel like there is so much flourishing and nourishing going on in the Emory and Spelman campuses. We are, again, very honored to be here. Thank you so much, Ravi. It is now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Pamela Scott-Johnson, the Provost of Spelman College, who will also say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now, you actually can say good afternoon back to me. This is a Sunday in Georgia. I'm Pamela Scott-Johnson, Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs at Spelman, and on behalf of President Helene Gale, the Board of Trustees, faculty, students, and staff at Spelman, we're honored to be here, and we're honored to partner as well as thank our partner and sponsoring organizations. Let me move this mic so I can actually read my notes. So the title of this gathering is very appropriate in many ways: Empowering Eaters Access, Affordability, Health Choices, Atlanta. So the title reflects our alignment in addressing some of the same goals. Two of those five pillars that the Biden-Harris administration have put forward are ones that are indelibly etched in the strategic commitment of Spelman College: enhancing nutrition and food security research, equity in access, and improving access for our communities. So while we're privileged to be a part of this conversation today, we see this participation as our obligation and our responsibility as a demonstration of how we choose to change the world. And if you know anything about Spelman, we send our graduates out, but we embody a choice to change and impact the world. So who are we at Spelman College? As if some of you don't know, but we'd like to remind you. We are a premier Black women's liberal arts institution and global powerhouse founded in 1881. And we take with great pride that intersectionality of being part of the historically Black university community, being part of the women's institution and the liberal arts institution. As such, we've been the #1 HBCU over the last 17 years, but we're known for our exemplary undergraduate teaching and innovation. So it's a small wonder that our college is dedicated to being on the forefront of transformative, interdisciplinary projects in higher education, such as food studies. Our transdisciplinary food studies program is certainly one of our points of pride, for we are one of a few HBCUs with the food studies, and ours is unique. Other HBCU campuses are rooted in agriculture, plant and soil studies, nutrition, and food science programs. And it is within an institutional context of curricular review emphasis on interdisciplinarity and intellectual and activist energy about food that sparked an alliance of faculty across disciplinary boundaries to create our food studies program at Spelman. So we believe our food studies program, through our African diasporic lens, that guides students in questioning the very foundation of what we consider food to be challenging, and challenge them to consider how food, its naming, production, distribution, and consumption is historically contingent and is simultaneously a site of pleasure and power. The program showcases Black women scholars in the food ecosystem and engages our Spelman community in program activities on topics that examine political and socio-historical questions on the causes and consequences of Black women's labor, productive and unrecognized, food access, federal policies, land ownership and theft, healthcare, and food security. Thus, we at Spelman understand the politics, those activities associated with governance food, and the polity, those groups of people organized around the governance of food. Although faculty members have been doing food-related work for years, the Food Studies program became a minor course of study in the fall of 2015 and graduated its first studies minors in the spring of 2019. The program continues to thrive under the leadership and direction of Dr. Kimberly Jackson, who you've heard and who you will hear later, and who also serves as the chair and professor of chemistry and biochemistry. And at present, our food studies program has about 25 minors. Dr. Jackson states that our food leaders, remember the politics and polity of what we do, and the unrecognized labor of that food distribution and productivity. So our food leaders value inclusivity, innovation, and justice. Based on these powerful values, this is important work for our community. This academic year alone, the program has impacted over 300 students, faculty, and staff who have been volunteering at our Victory Garden, creating classes from the garden resources, and attending our various food studies, seminars, and workshops in service of the values to our programs. So for the past 5 years, one of the important projects of the Spelman Food Studies program has been to host an annual Food Justice Summit. This year, we elevated this partnership with the Food Tank and with Emory University to host this incredible event. So I'm just going to take a point of privilege from my notes to say for many years we've been thinking about how to eliminate hunger in this world. I hope that we will have the will to do so because we have the skills and we have the resources. And I'm grateful to the Biden administration for being able to proffer this as an opportunity. I also think about the rich heritage of living in Georgia, and I'm a South Carolinian, and where food is grown and for which, though, there are people in our communities that go hungry. So think about that. Think about what's wrong with that picture, and think about what's right about who we are and what we're doing today to gather. So let's stop talking about this and let's do this. So I thank you today, and I look forward to a fruitful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pamela. We absolutely do have the innovation, the resources. We do need more of that will, and I hope policymakers are listening today. It is now my honor to welcome Will McIntee, the Senior Advisor for Public Engagement at the White House Office of Public Engagement. While he joins me on stage, we are going to share a video from Atlanta Mayor Dickens. While Mayor Dickens could not join us, unfortunately, today, we are very, very excited that he could still participate via this recording for the event. So I hope you enjoy it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Atlanta Mayor Dickens here, pleased to greet you during Empowering Eaters, the health and well-being of future generations in policy. I want to thank Food Tank, Emory University's Office of Campus Life, and Spelman College for hosting this event. Today's summit focuses on implementing strategies that will increase access and affordability of nutritious foods and empower our residents to make healthier food choices. 1 in 9 people and 1 in 8 children in our state face hunger. We have a moral obligation to ensure that none of the families in our communities experience food insecurity. Accomplishing this takes collective effort, including policymakers, food producers, nonprofit organizations, our public and private partners, and more. Together, we can end hunger, reduce diet-related diseases and health disparities, improving the health and well-being of our citizens. Thank you for being here today and helping us shine a light on the path forward to a brighter future.
Round of applause, please. Again, thank you to Mayor Dickens' office for helping us do that. Will, so excited to see you. We've done this a lot.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. So I'm hoping that you can start by sharing with the audience some context for our summit today and what really went into the development of the national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health, and why has this been such a big priority for the administration?
Yeah, thank you, Danny. First of all, I just want to take a step back and say thank you again to both Spelman College and to Emory University and for setting an excellent scene here. I think you laid out really a lot of the priorities that we've been talking through since the beginning of this administration, how both your universities, institutions have really been leading in this work. So thank you for hosting this. Danny, thank you. And to the Food Tank team for, again, bringing such an excellent group of folks together who are really passionate about these issues that we've really been working on since the beginning of this administration, right, in part because of the real passion around these issues of ending hunger, of improving nutrition and physical activity in this country, and especially around reducing and closing the disparities that we know exist in our communities across the country as well. So, the president hosted the first White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health in over 50 years in September of 2022. And in the lead up to that conference, which again was really in response to a call to action by many stakeholders across this country, and really was taken up by President Biden to ensure that since it's been 50 years since we've really come together as a country to really examine how we go about ending hunger and reducing diet-related disease. We started by really listening and learning from many of the stakeholders who made that call to action, many of the partners that have been working in communities across the country for years and years to help us meet that goal. And so we really started with, again, hundreds of public listening sessions that we really examined these issues with partners across the country, looked at some of these issues regionally, talked to folks across sectors, across civil society, whether that was the private sector, whether it was farmers and ranchers, and the farm workers who help to produce our food and grow our food, whether that was academia and the important role that research institutions play in examining these issues. We had really, really important and critical conversations with individuals who have lived expertise with hunger and diet-related disease to both hear from them about what's working and most importantly really what's not working. And so through that process, my colleagues from the Domestic Policy Council, later on you'll hear from my colleague Kellyanne Blazek, who serves as Special Assistant to the President for Rural and Agriculture Policy. They took all those findings, all those conversations, and laid out a national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health that the president announced at that conference in September of 2022 that were really the federal tools and resources that can be utilized and leveraged to help achieve President Biden's goal of ending hunger and reducing diet-related disease by improving nutrition and physical activity while closing those disparities that exist in our communities by the year 2030. And so through that national strategy, we examine these issues through 5 pillars. I know the Provost from Spelman laid out some of those connections with the work, incredible work that Spelman does in the food space. But those pillars included improving food access and affordability, integrating nutrition and health, empowering all consumers to have access to healthy food choices, supporting physical activity for all, and enhancing nutrition and food security research. And we both use those as the pillars for that national strategy for those federal tools and resources that were outlined in the national strategy, but also as a call to action for all sectors, all of civil society to lean in where they can to help us achieve these goals, because we know that the federal government cannot achieve the president's ambitious goal of ending hunger and reducing diet-related disease alone. It's really going to take all sectors of society to help us achieve that goal.
Yeah, it is an ambitious goal, but what I like about what you and the administration have done is that this is doable. We can do this, and these pillars really help explain that. And I think, the listening sessions have led to so many partnerships and collaborations, and that has been so key to this work. And I'm wondering if you can share with the audience how you connect the different organizations that you're working with one another, how you encourage that collaboration to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we're very excited to be here in Atlanta. One of our critical partners in this work was the CDC Foundation, which is based here in Atlanta. And I know you'll hear from Rachel Forensic later from the CDC Foundation, who's been a really incredible partner as we, as I mentioned, when we put out the national strategy at the conference, we also announced over 60 commitments from external partners, from state and local governments, academic institutions, community-based organizations, from the private sector, so food and healthcare companies that were aligned with the national strategy and with those 5 pillars that I mentioned earlier. That was through a partnership with the CDC Foundation and really through the conversations that we had in the lead up to the conference. And so it was really incredible to see all of that happen in such a short amount of time.
Right.
I think we really, we put those about 60 commitments together in really about 3 to 4 months from the time that the president announced that the conference was taking place to the time that we hosted that conference in September of 2022. And following the conference, we heard from so many different partners that we had connected with in the lead up to the conference, folks that reached out after the conference who were really interested in the work that we were doing. And there were several folks who said, hey, if we had more time,
right,
we would love to be a part of this work. And so the White House announced the White House Challenge to End Hunger and Build Healthy Communities a little over a year ago, as really a second call to action, again, for state and local governments, for the private sector, for organizations that are really critical to this work on top of the progress that we're making in implementing that national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health. And just over about a month and a half ago, we announced an additional 141 new commitments, again, from a range of organizations, totaling about $1.7 billion in financial value. Just to name a few of those important partnerships, one was a partnership between all of the major sports leagues, so National Football League, National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball, WNBA, National Women's Soccer League, and their players' unions. So it's important to have the players' voice as a part of this. With the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, to both continue to build off the work they do with youth to promote fitness and physical activity, but just as importantly, to provide a nutrition education component to the work that they do with youth to ensure that youth understand the importance of healthy, nutritious diet. So that was incredibly exciting partnership that the second gentleman announced just a couple of months ago. But we got really a range of commitments. Just to name a few from right here in Georgia, Healthy Savannah and the city of Savannah, Georgia, committed to advancing nutrition security by supporting three main areas of focus. One was solving communities' top food system priorities. The second was adopting policies related to equitable food access and a robust and resilient food system. And the third was around collaborating to improve healthy food access and address upstream barriers to nutrition security, improve social determinants of health, and to ensure health equity. Another commitment we received was from the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University. They made a 10-year, $25 million in-kind commitment to launch a national training and research collaborative to serve as an open source web-based platform that will provide healthcare professionals evidence-based tools that help integrate nutrition, exercise, and sustainable behavior change. And then another one from a small town of Douglasville, Georgia, just west of Atlanta, partnership with Share Our Strength to both, they committed to launching a task force and to creating an action plan to help their community bring community leaders together, members of the community together, to both put that task force together, create that action plan to end hunger and reduce diet-related disease in their own community by 2030, similar to what we did as an administration with the National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. So really incredible to see such a diverse range of partners come together to work on this. And again, want to shout out the CDC Foundation for their incredible work in helping us to secure these commitments and the work that they're doing with these commitment makers to ensure that we continue to track the incredible progress that they're making.
For sure. And one of the things that I really love, that there's been so much amazing progress since 2022. And there have been these different kinds of collaborations, some that would be expected, some that would not be expected, some unusual and uncommon collaborations. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how government agencies who never worked really with one another came together on this national strategy as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's been, as I mentioned earlier, it's really been incredible to see the progress just in the last year and a half in implementing the national strategy on hunger, nutrition, health. We obviously have so much work to do in this space, and I don't want to steal. I know we have a couple colleagues here from the administration, including Kellyanne and Dr. Cotright from USDA, so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder here. So I'll just go through a few of those updates, and we'll leave some of that for some of the panels to come. But just to go through a few of the accomplishments and the progress thus far. Since the conference in September of 2022, the Department of Agriculture has invested nearly $30 million in American Rescue Plan funding in 264 school districts to update technology and facilities in their cafeterias and to help improve the nutritional quality of their meals. USDA finalized a rule that gives an estimated 3,000 more school districts in high-need areas the option to make healthy school meals available to all students at no cost to their families during the school year. The Food and Drug Administration has conducted a study to inform a proposed rule that would standardize front-of-package labeling, which of course provides consumers with the knowledge they need to help make healthy nutrition choices. HHS has released the U.S. playbook to address social determinants of health, which includes a set of framework of actions that federal agencies will undertake to address unmet social needs like the impact of housing and education on hunger and diet-related disease for all communities. HHS has also released guidance for states on what health-related social needs, services, and supports are allowable under Medicaid and the CHIP program. They also have approved new groundbreaking Medicaid Section 1115 demonstration initiatives in Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Oregon, and Washington State that allow for test coverage of services such as evidence-based nutritional assistance, medically tailored meals, other health-related social needs for individuals with Medicaid. I know my colleague from USDA will elaborate on this, but the president has also advocated for full funding of the Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, the WIC program. We were at risk of not being able to meet all eligible individuals. Unfortunately, Congress, in the most recent spending bill, allocated that funding after the president and the administration advocated for that. The president has included additional funding for the WIC program in his fiscal year 2025 budget, which is really critical in ensuring that we continue to meet the need there. They also have recently released a rule that updates the WIC food package to more align with the dietary guidelines, ensuring that those families have access to healthy, nutritious food. And then I also wanted to mention the incredible work that the USDA has done in implementing the summer EBT program, which is a program that will help families, eligible families who typically would receive assistance for school meals, to be able to have additional funding for groceries during the summer months when their children are at home. And through USDA's incredible work with the states, with tribal nations and territories, 37 states, all 5 U.S. territories and 3 tribal nations have submitted plans and are implementing this new program that will begin in summer of 2024, which will is expected to serve 21 million kids this summer, which
Incredible.
is huge.
Huge.
And really historic. I do want to mention that, of course, this is a program that all 50 states are eligible for, and so there's still 13 states that did not take this opportunity. Georgia actually is one of those states that has not submitted a plan, and so I know USDA will continue to work with those states that did not take it up for this year. This is a program that states are eligible to apply for 2025, and we hope and look forward to working with Georgia and other states to do that. I believe the number in Georgia is about 1.1 million kids, children who could be benefited if Georgia were to take on this federal funding. And so we look forward to working with partners here to continue to lift up the importance of that program.
Yeah, and Will won't say this, but I can write your Congress members and encourage them to be part of that program. It's so important to make sure that those 1.1 million students in the state of Georgia get the access to the good food, delicious food, and nutrition that they need. Well, I kind of want to end on what you're most excited for. You have a lot of meetings today. You'll be hearing from a lot of people. What most excites you about today's event?
Yeah, well, first of all, events like this have been so helpful in securing the commitments that we talked about. We look forward to continuing to do this work with so many partners. We look forward to learning today. We learned so much through these events from the local leaders who are doing so much incredible work on the ground, and can really help inform some of the policies and programs that we're working to implement. And as you just touched on, there's so much happening in this space and so many opportunities that states and communities can take advantage of. And so both looking at opportunities for us to connect the dots between those resources. Yeah. And then for us to just be able to learn more about some of the approaches that all of you are taking in your communities, and find ways for us to better support the work that you are all doing. So thank you again for being here, and really excited to be here throughout the day to listen to these conversations and have conversations here, network on the side of those conversations to learn more about all that you're doing, and talk about how we can be helpful.
Thank you so much. Well, I do want to say it's been such an honor to work with Will and Kellyanne and so many other people in the White House. It makes me emotional because they are truly passionate about this work, and they are true public servants, as I said before. So please give Will a round of applause. Thank you. We're now going to turn to our first panel of the day with a conversation about the growth of the food as medicine movement. And joining me for this conversation, we have Tamara Melton, the co-founder and executive director of Diversity Dietetics. Then we'll have Tamara Ray Stevenson, the founder and CEO of Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture, also called WANDA. Dr. Kimberly Jackson, who is the director of food studies at Spelman College, and Karuna Rawal, who is the Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Marketing Officer for Nature's Fynd, and our good friend Stephen Jennings, who is the Stakeholder Relations and Brand Lead for Health and Sustainability at Ahold Delhaize USA. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see. This is a big panel, and we have a lot to talk about, so I'm so excited to turn to each of you. Tamara, I always like to start with you, because you've taught me so much over the years, especially during the pandemic. And so I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about nutrition and the nutrition and dietetic space today, the lack of diversity that still exists, and what that means for the care that is available to the people who actually need it.
Yeah, so I'd like to share the data just to let people know where we're sitting at. So I'm a registered dietitian, as is my colleague here next to me, a couple other people who are going to be speaking, and there's about 100,000 registered dietitians in the country. About less than 15% are people of color. It doesn't matter what group they identify from. So when we think about that, and we think about the reflection of what the country looks like, we don't have people who are, what I always tell people about dietitians is that our magical powers that we have, or something that we have, is that we can look at a food and break it down into its scientific properties. But then if we don't have people who are coming from that culture, who can also tie that in, then we have a huge blind spot. And so that's something that we have seen as with the work that we do at Diversify Dietetics, is really looking at that. We like to say we work in workforce development, because even us as a profession and other people who are professionals who are working in food and nutrition, if we don't have more people who can take both that science part of it, looking at the health part of it, but then that really important part, which is culture, because that's the thing that people have that tie them back to their home every single day, that they can do several times a day, then we know that there's that big blind spot there that has to be addressed.
And those blind spots are deadly if we don't address them. And I wonder, I'm sure that young women, students come up to you all the time wanting to be involved in this work. What advice do you give them?
I tell them to know that they are experts of the food in their community first, and don't, I think those of us who have, and a lot of us in this room have lots of letters after our names. We work really hard for those. But people from their communities, they know those communities, and to tell them to start from there and feel really proud about that.
Yeah.
And then as they start to layer on their formal expertise and their training, to never forget that, because they are bringing in something that's missing right now into our profession, into other professions. And so to always keep that, not to second guess themselves if they know that they're the expert, as they start to layer on the evidence-based practice.
Thank you so much for that. And Tambra, if I can turn to you, you've also, like Tomorrow, been lifting up this idea of different diets. You and I have talked a lot about this idea of like the Mediterranean diet gets, lifted up as the only diet that's going to make you healthier if you want to lose weight or lower your cholesterol. There are so many diets, especially in African cultures, that could do better maybe than the Mediterranean diet, or just as good. Can you talk about how to include those African cultures and other cultures in these food as medicine discussions?
Most definitely. Such a privilege to be a part of this dynamic panel to raise an important conversation about our food is our medicine. And when I say that, I speak to the fact that I grew up in Oklahoma with a Ghanaian stepfather. I learned very early on about this dynamic of living in a dual household of American South and also African cuisine. And because of that, it had my curiosity wanting to go find the foods to help heal my grandmothers who have diabetes, one still living at age 97, geriatric pediatric nurse retired from OU Medical. Check out the piece that I did for Eating Well magazine on our African heritage diet as medicine. That's up for a James Byrd Award consideration this year. But I go on this journey of finding my own heritage through the Fulanis and going to Nigeria and being able to understand that we need more investment in African nutrition research here in the US because of the emphasis and really this concept of the West being better than the rest of us. Having been having dinners from Kenyans to Nigerians to Ghanaians to South Africans on the continent, we are playing such a huge vital role in influencing even the nutrition content on the culture in the continent. And that really speaks to the volume of the work that we have to do here. And so part of that is the investment in NIH nutrition research, but also the curriculum that is taught in our schools must change and reflect the dynamic transformation of our demographic. But also it speaks to when we don't have a seat at the table for all the cultures, that means that we're truly not a part of a food democracy, and that everyone should say that their food is a part of the culture of America. Also, it speaks to local food economy. If we're not making sure that all foods are part of it, that means some folks are not able to make money because they're not showing that we're not investing in the functional foods of African cuisine that we know are climate smart, from fonio to millet to bitter leaf, plantain, black-eyed peas, like all these different wonderful dishes that make our culture dynamic and our health better, and everyone can enjoy these cuisines as well. So I invite you to come to DC, where we have such a large African diaspora community, to be a part of it, but it shouldn't just be locked into one area. I think with the rise of high on the hog, black food is just growing in this space, and as a communications PhD candidate in America, and part of my goal and role is showing how media should transform how we share the narratives, and why we launched a Black Food Census through Rwanda that you can go to that article at Eating Well and complete, because we need more data around consumer insights to really share that there's a market demand for these foods and the need to research them and make them more available through the supply chain, and how from farmers growing the food to the nutritionists being able to educate people, especially as precision nutrition is taking off, and understanding that we have to personalize our nutrition, and that means our cultural foods like millet and all the rest are part of that need to be a part of the conversation and have the nutrition analysis around it.
And they build resilience in so many different ways, not just to climate change, which takes up all the oxygen in the room, but it builds resilience in communities. And that capital and investment is so needed. And I want to come back to that, as well as the storytelling piece in a minute. Kimberly, if I can turn to you, when we last spoke, you mentioned this term that I had really never heard before, but that you are personally working to cultivate a generation of compassionate scholars who are aware of the effects of systemic racism on these issues, on our diets, on culture. And I'm wondering what that looks like at Spelman and how those compassionate scholars are being cultivated and grown.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to trade quickly as someone will get you a new mic? Thank you.
Hello.
I'll fix this. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you. So at Spelman College, I'm a scientist by training. So when Danny and Bernie asked me to be on this panel, I started saying, do I do food as medicine? But I do. Part of my scholarship is in plant-based therapies for advanced prostate cancer. Wow. And so as a part of that, I'm in the chemistry department. I'm head of the chemistry department. About 40% of our scholars at Spelman are in STEM, and they want to go into the health field. If they see me, their junior year and their senior year, they may see me in biochemistry course. I don't teach biochemistry the traditional way. We train our students to think about compassion, to think about empathy, to have cultural sensitivity, because they're going to be moving into that medical space where there are people that may use botanical medicine. And so how does that look? So we take the stigma and the attitudes away from using botanical medicines and to pair it with what we consider pharmaceutical medicine today. And so that's what we do, what we mean by training these compassionate scholars. And we've taken it a step further at Spelman. We have this beautiful garden that you heard our provost mention, where we grow over 100 different crops from the African diaspora. We have this wonderful garden educator and specialist who pours love and cultivate that space. And because of that, we, for the first time, launched our Black herbalism course this semester. And so students are able to take it a step further. They work with the herbs in the classroom space, and they're actually growing what they work with in the classroom. So yeah, compassionate scholar is a big deal for us in terms of creating this type of cultural sensitivity for our students today.
And that's been missing in this field for so long. Yeah. And what I love about what you're doing at Spelman is that you're celebrating food, you're celebrating, the idea of these plant-based options as medicine, as they truly are, and culture, and also justice. And I wonder what you're learning personally, Kimberly, from the students themselves.
It's amazing. I'm learning everything. I'm learning that life is food, food is medicine, food sustains us, food heals us. Food is in our everyday walk. What is wonderful about our students, we take them on a global trip around Black foodways every year. And so we take these students who are econ majors, they are theater majors, they're computer scientists, they're health sciences, because it's an interdisciplinary program. And they go to these spaces and they're able to unpack how food impacts the world. To have these types of global and political discussions are absolutely amazing. And it's taking this Black woman who is a scientist to a new level of really digging into the food world, where at one time I just said, oh yeah, I work with a natural product from licorice root, and by the way, it has this, beta-diketone constituent called dibenzomethane, and students look at me like, what? And by the way, it treats prostate cancer, and they're like, hey, Dr. Jackson, you're curing cancer with food. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I learn every day from our students, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's fantastic. What a great environment to work in, and your students, and you are very lucky. Karuna, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the private sector and how you think food brands are thinking about producing options for eaters that aren't only better for them, in the food as medicine way, but are also products that they want to buy, that are delicious, that they want to consume, because none of this works, right? We can all talk about food all day long. If it's not delicious, no one's going to eat it, and it's not going to help anyone.
Absolutely. First of all, just so honored to be here with this esteemed panel. So I appreciate being here to have an opportunity to talk about how really it's going to take all of us, right? Like food is something that is so permeated, with our culture, our communities, and it's really about, bringing joy, ultimately, Danny, as you said. And I think one of the challenges as we think about trying to change behavior in food, and I come from a background of marketing, consumer behavior, and consumer insights, and our company is trying to really do something to change how we all eat, and that is not a small task. People have some very deep emotional connections to food, and one of the most important that sometimes we forget is joy, to your point. Food brings us together and it gives us a great deal of joy. So as we think about behavioral change, I think it's incredibly important that we create delicious options so people don't feel like they have to sacrifice in order to either be healthier or do something that's better for the planet. So the company I represent here is Nature's Fynd, which is a new to the world protein we're introducing to the world. It's a fungi protein, so it's not a plant or an animal. It's actually the third kingdom, which many of you studied in science, right? And based on a discovery that was actually made in Yellowstone National Park. So our chief science officer, who is a graduate student, at that time at Montana State, was doing some research for NASA, and that research to understand how life can thrive in very resource-constrained environments led them to Yellowstone National Park, and that's where they discovered this fungi. So we have a new protein, it's called Phi. The F is for Fusarium, which is the strain of fungi that it is, and the Y is for Yellowstone. So if you hear Phi protein, that's what we do. And hopefully you'll have a chance to taste it. Our yogurts are in the back, but we are now creating meatless and dairy-free foods that are made from fungi. And the remarkable thing about fungi, if you go back to my story in Yellowstone, is they are excellent at thriving in very harsh conditions. This particular one really has been thriving in if you can imagine, the volcanic hot springs of Yellowstone, not exactly a hospitable environment, but learning to do more with less, which is, as you think about humanity and the point that we are at with our planet and our resources, we really need to figure out how to do more with less. So we're very excited that we're bringing something new into the ecosystem for food. But the most important thing, and the thing that everyone in my company will tell you I run around talking about all the time, is taste, taste, taste. It has to be delicious, because you can be, curious and try something that's innovative once, but if it doesn't taste delicious, you're not going to come back. So we've put a real premium on introducing foods that are delicious. Fungi have been around forever. We just haven't thought about them. I mean, we eat, the distant cousin of the fungi, of our fungi, which is the mushroom, obviously. But there's lots of fungi that can really help us solve some of these challenges. And they use a fraction of the resources to grow. And most importantly for this discussion, as we come back to kind of this idea of food as medicine, food has to bring joy, but food is also medicine, right? It can help us heal. And fungi in particular, this one that we're working with, is 50% protein, a good source of fiber, and protein and fiber together are super important as you think about nutritional density. So for every calorie you're consuming, you want to get as much of both of those things.
Yeah.
And it's hard, we look at animals that provide a lot of protein, plants may provide some protein and fiber, but we've got this unique combination in fungi that we are really excited about. So just thinking about, food bringing joy, it has to do that in order for us to be able to take advantage of it. So we're excited to be able to bring another option, and it's going to take a lot of solutions. People get into the conversation about, is it plant-based, is it fungi-based, we need all of it, right? Because, each of us kind of has this opportunity 3 to 5 times a day to choose how we eat, right? And making one of those choices, whether you do it once a day, once a week, but to make a better choice that's better for your health and better for the planet is really what we're trying to do. So that's kind of the challenge we have ahead of us.
Thank you. Those products that combine joy and health and innovation and science are all really interesting. And Stephen, that makes me want to turn to you. And as a retailer, I'm wondering if you can talk about how, is it easy to make shoppers find these kinds of products and help them make healthier choices? And what are sort of the obstacles you're facing as a retailer, who I know is someone who cares deeply about this issue and cares about hunger and access and affordability, but how do you steer those consumers towards healthier choices?
Oh, $1 million question. So I'm the only one not worthy to be on stage with these great leaders here, so I appreciate the invite. So I work for a large grocery retail group, actually the largest on the East Coast. We stretch from Maine to Georgia, over to Tennessee, and we serve 30 million customers a week. a week. So the impact that we have on customers' purchases, it's pretty significant, right? So one of the things we're challenged with, it's like the simple question that Danny just asked, but it's all the zillion challenges that happen behind the scenes, which is 65% of us still make our purchases in a brick and mortar grocery store, right? So we have the education, we know we shouldn't eat this or that, and we should eat more of this and all that, but at the end of the day, you hear all that, you go into the grocery store, you may be by yourself, or you may have 3 screaming kids hanging on the side of your shopping cart. You then have a choice to make between A and B. And A, I know my kids are going to eat it. B, I know it might cost a little more, and it might be a little healthier for them, but I don't know if they're going to eat it. What do you think they're picking? Yeah. So the challenge for us is, and one of these is one of our commitments with the White House, the End Hunger Challenge, is up to $1 million in education and awareness specifically for diverse communities in socioeconomic challenged areas. So what we found, and we have a ton of dietitians, and they work all throughout our brands and help bring in that awareness, education, culturally relevant, but it comes down to, is it what I want there, and can I afford it?
Yeah.
So what we have to do is showcase what all does affordability mean. It's not just the price tag, because that's the first thing we associate, but it's the value in the product. So again, if there's a question that my kid or I may not eat it, then am I going to waste the money if I'm on a fixed income or government assistance? So this is where we have to kind of show them the way and showcase, whether it's through recipes. And we have tons of online services in all of our brands when it comes to some of this work. But at the end of the day, we have to show value. So does anyone here eat eggs by chance? Are they a little expensive right now? Or have been, for sure. So we have to show value beyond the eggs. We have to show additional protein options and other things like that, because we have all of that. We have on average 70,000 items in our grocery store. 70,000 different items. So it's part of our job as the role model to nudge, we like to use the word nudge all the time, nudge our customers to better for you options. And one of the ways we do that in store is through a shelf tag program we call Guiding Stars. So Guiding Stars is a way that you can shop for better or more nutritious products in a store. We also have public commitments related to healthier purchases within our store. So we're committed internally to nudge, again, our customers, because at the end of the day, we're all Americans here, and the one thing we hate is to be told what to do or told what to buy. So we need to show them and nudge them without telling them. And that's the thing that we work really hard every day to do.
Yeah, and that makes me want to come back to the storytelling point that's been brought up. How can we create, this is really a question for you all, how can we create a better narrative around what healthy food is, what food is medicine, so that people feel included, that it is an inclusive system? Tamara, maybe you can address that first.
I think people know a lot about food already, and they know what to eat and what's healthy, so just letting them know that they have that information first. If you ask somebody, what should you eat? Most of you know fruits and vegetables and probably should move my body and drink water.
Right.
So starting from that perspective and then building upon there, because nobody likes to go in thinking like, I'm doing everything wrong. I don't know what I should be eating. I'm not feeding my children the way that they should. I'm stunting their growth or something like that.
Sure.
So I think starting from there and letting people know that they do have baseline knowledge. They know that. Maybe we need to tweak it. Maybe I'm borrow nudging. Maybe we need to nudge them to something more. But like starting from that perspective is a positive note, and then working from there.
Right, Deborah.
Yeah, I would say to jump in,
Sorry.
that's one of the key reasons. As a mom, I created Little Wanda as a character, our version of Smokey Bear for nutrition. And through her journey.
She's real cute.
Yeah. We have books here for those who come. But Little Wanda is about going on this foodie journey to Africa, meeting with Big Wanda, farmers, nutritionists, those in the culinary space, and using African foods as medicine and making them available in the local African language, Kiswahili to Hausa to Amharic, and making sure that we bridge this cultural gap by way of showing not only these characters like Mama Dumillet and Hassa Hibiscus, but also sharing the fun and joy, as our colleagues shared on the panel, that what food can do and bring in creating belonging in the community, in the kitchen with family. And so having everyone from Nana Wanda, Mama Wanda, Auntie Wanda, and Little Wanda, we show through these multi-generational narratives that we are all a part of being the food heroes who are wearing capes as aprons. And it's so important to help uplift and share that. We have a patented design of Little Wanda. We want to really scale what her narratives can be in a changing demographic in this country, but also the influence it has on the continent as well. And so the Wanda Academy became a hybrid learning platform supported by Johns Hopkins, where we've created an opportunity for Mama Wandas and Auntie and Nana to come together in real life to learn about cultural foods as medicine with a nutritionist who's from that culture, and also be able to link it up with the therapist because of the mood-food root connection, and then also ecotherapy, getting them out to farms, planting their feet in the ground, reclaiming the soil again, and knowing where the food comes from. So it takes a multi-generational approach to center them as the food hero of the story, borrowing from Joseph Campbell's work, and really understand that when you have women who are the face of food insecurity in this country, then they bring along the community, and why we're launching Food as Medicine, the Black Community Initiative, with the help of many of our partners this year as well.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Karuna?
Yeah, just to build on quickly, because I know we're tight on time. I think one of the most important things we can do is connect with community in order to drive change. So one of the really interesting things for us has been, as we launched our brand, and we have this protein that's incredibly versatile. So one of the benefits we have is it's a protein platform where it can allow us to create a lot of different foods. So different ethnic foods, different regional foods, different cultural connections that allows us to create, you know, a huge variety, because we can't just take the same food to every community and expect that they're going to adopt it or change their behavior. The other thing we've, you know, just seen just in our data is the consumer that we're seeing coming forward and being really excited about what we're doing are actually Black and brown women. And they're one of the most underrepresented voices in this whole food movement. So one of the things we've really decided to double down on is really working with influencers in that community, and finding creators in that community to help share the message. Because you're going to listen to someone, frankly, who understands where you come from, who has a similar background, similar context, and can relate, right? And can translate the message. So it's not just one message that, you know, works for everybody. So I think it's really thinking about what is the messaging we're trying to deliver, and really communicating that, you know, this is something that's better for you and better for the planet.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to take the conversation from why would you try something that's this new innovative protein to why wouldn't you? If it's better for you, if it's better for the health of our planet, and it's most importantly, it tastes delicious, so you're not feeling like you're making a sacrifice, and you can buy it at an affordable price. That's really, I think, kind of bringing all of those, you know, different decisions together in order to create change.
Yeah, Dr. Jackson, I know storytelling and narrative changing is an important part of the work that you do. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so we do work around digital archiving and oral history. Our partners, we have partners now with Princeton University where we're going out into the local area, and we're going to South Georgia and Alabama, and we're collecting the stories and preserving the history of Black and brown folks. And so this is a way that we can also continue with food traditions and understanding food traditions, and this is what we're doing also at Spelman College. So
Thank you.
I just want to end by saying, because we're at time, food equals joy, and you've heard that a lot on this panel today. Good food is good food, and it does bring you joy. My husband and I do have an IG. I'm not good with social media, but we're the cooking chemists. And so if you at me, that's what a young person told me, at me, the cooking chemist. We don't post much, but on occasions, you'll see joy and happiness around the table of cooking, two chemists cooking good food together.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to take one more minute to Mode in the back, because I want all of you, I think this is an important panel to have a call to action. And so, Dr. Jackson, maybe what's your call to action for everyone when we're talking about food is medicine, food as medicine? What do you want people to take away from this discussion, just sort of ultimately?
Move away from the different stigmas and attitudes against botanical medicine and food as physical medicine, and just know that you can pair that with traditional, what we consider traditional, which is not pharmaceutical medicine.
Right, love it. Thank you, Karuna.
So I would just encourage all of us to have a sense of optimism about the future of our food system, because we actually have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for sometimes. So every one of you in the audience here and everyone listening to us, you make a decision 3 to 5 times a day, depending on how many times you eat, and you can make a different choice, and you're empowered to make that choice. And when you do that, I think the entire ecosystem does respond. So it takes effort. But I think whether you're going to do it, once a day or once a week or once a month or whatever it might be, when you make that choice, it really speaks volumes. So I think just reminding everyone to be optimistic, because we really believe that that's what's going to change the system.
Thank you.
And I would say go to the Eating Well piece, read about the African Heritage Diet as Medicine, scroll down to the call to action section. You'll fill out the Black Food Census, learn more about what it means really to be a food citizen, and also go to foodbillofrights.org that launched a week ago to understand this conversation is about our right to food as our medicine, and to understand how it's a part of democracy for all of us to have a seat at the table. And follow us at iamwanda.org across LinkedIn, Twitter. Nope, not Twitter. We're not promoting that. And Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you so much. Tamara.
So I would tell people to be additive. It's not all or nothing. And so all of us are working in different spaces around food, and food as medicine, whatever that's, be that in our own kitchens or if you're a leader at an organization, recognize that you have qualities and people who are there and power that's within your space, and then add on from there. I think sometimes we were talking about food is joy, which I love that conversation. Sometimes I know a friend of mine gave me a shirt that said food police, which is a joke, right? People that see a dietitian coming, we actually are the best people to eat with, I would say. We're the most fun because everybody has a lot of knowledge with them already. The communities that you work with do as well.
Absolutely.
Add on from there is what I would suggest that people do, and do it with positivity.
Love it. Stephen, you get the last word.
She took mine. So it's taking the shame out of food. It's all foods fit. It's meeting people where they are in their life, in this moment, and it's just incorporating these things, so simple things. And I know Danny's probably mad at me because I didn't say it earlier, but it's including frozen options.
Oh, I love
and
frozen.
low sodium, low sugar canned options. There's a huge variety of food to meet all of us where we are. So take the shame out of eating. Eat on, people, eat on, and enjoy.
Yay. Thanks to this group of panelists. Give them a bigger round of applause, please. Bigger. I also want to mention, you can stay seated for a minute. I want to mention that Tambra, as she said, will have her book available during the reception. I think we have display copies in the back, but she will be signing it, so I encourage you to find her later this evening. We're now going to continue our discussion about the importance of healthy, nutritious diets and how we increase access for some of the country's youngest eaters. So please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator, Rose Scott. I'm so honored she's here. I can't even tell you, an award-winning journalist and the host of A Closer Look on Atlanta's NPR. Thank you.
Hello, can y'all hear me? I have this really cool Beyonce microphone. It's like, break out and start singing. Wow, thank you all for being here. I guess I get the honor of also introducing our next panel, so I'm gonna go ahead and get right to it. I think it's interesting that they give a journalist only 25 minutes to talk about, now you're telling me to move. See what happens? I follow instructions very well. They only give us 25 minutes to try to figure this out, but we will do the best we can. So let's welcome Kellyanne Blazik from the Special Assistant to the President for Agriculture and Rural Policy, Alistair Pullen, Executive Director of the Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, Will Sellers, Executive Director, Wholesome Wave, Georgia. I think he's been on my show. Diane Harris, Senior Health Scientist and Team Leader for the Centers for Disease Control, and Lisa Ratcliffe, CEO of Kaboom. Your panelists. Y'all can clap. I hope y'all get a little bit more enthusiastic about that. That's okay. Actually, I want to start with Alistair. Can you give us a snapshot of the average student at the neighborhood charter school? Who are these students?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
First off, thank you for having me. Thank you to Food Tank for having us here as part of this panel, and I look forward to the conversation ahead. So for those of you who are not familiar with Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, we are a charter school in Metro Atlanta. We have 2 campuses where we serve students from grades K through 8, about 630 students, and 133 employees. Central to our work as a charter school is to innovate, is to think about education differently. And one of the ways that we do that is thinking about the importance of nutrition and local food. We have 2 working farms where we produce over 2,000 pounds worth of food that then goes into our nutrition programs, which serves our students for lunch. And when it comes to characterizing the typical student at ANCS, the first word that comes to mind is joy. And that is when you come and you see our students, they are excited to be in school, they're excited to be there, and that is in huge part the result of the holistic approach that we take. They have energy, they're eating nutritiously, they're excited, they're engaged, and they understand what it means to be part of a neighborhood and a larger community as well.
And so I want to stay with you for a moment because I'm curious, for those students who attend your school, what would you say is their level or their knowledge of understanding where their food comes from, as opposed to then once they've been in your school for a few months? The knowledge, I'm sure, is shifted.
It shifts greatly, and part of their educational experience involves working on our school farms so they see firsthand where their food comes from, and it's always really fascinating to see students' knowledge improve and increase as they matriculate and get older during their time at ANCS. I think very specifically of our kindergartners who come in and they're kind of wandering around the farm and what is all this, and used to oftentimes more processed foods. Mm-hmm. And to see those light bulb moments and that information click where all of a sudden they realize that, wow, the lettuce that was on our farm is now in my school lunch, and actually I worked to pick that, is a really, really neat moment when we see all of these things that should be common sense become integrated, and it makes sense in the mind of a 5-year-old, and then, of course, again, in the mind of a 12 and 13-year-old.
Kellyanne, when you hear this story from Alistair, not all students in this country, K through 12, particularly in our public education system, get to experience that.
Swap mics here. First, I want to start with an audience question. How many people ate school meals at their school? Ate school meals. So for those at home, there's a bunch of hands up. There's 30 million kids that eat school meals every day, and so it's a big chunk of the population, and it's a big lever that we have at the federal government. So I just wanted to highlight one action that we're taking. It's in Pillar 3 of the National Strategy, which is a proposed rule that USDA issued last year to advance stronger nutrition standards in hopes that more schools will offer healthy foods, like Alistair mentioned. One of the key pieces of that is what would be the first ever added sugar limit in school meals. We know kids are eating too much added sugar. I get a thumbs up right there. I appreciate that. And so wanted to highlight that because in previous iterations and previous administrations that have tried to advance higher nutrition standards, it's been rolled back by Congress. So USDA will be finalizing the rule this spring, and we're really excited to get that out, but we really need folks and the public to support that rule and hopefully support more schools being able to do what schools like Alistair are doing and ensuring healthy foods for kids.
Diane, I want to come to you because we've heard so far, and I love this word because people come on my show all the time and they say it takes a holistic approach to this, that, and the third, and we keep hearing about a holistic approach, but when it comes down to folks understanding the importance of nutritious, healthy lunches, breakfast for our students, it seems it's still missing. There's this perception of, well, some districts can do this and some districts can't do that. So there's always this red tape, or someone says, oh, it's complex, but it should.
Those different approaches. So we work really with states and communities in lots of different food access strategies, everything from the fruit and vegetable programs, the nutrition incentive, and the fruit and vegetable prescription programs that Will's going to talk about in a minute. We work with access to foods through institutional food service and a lot of different kinds of venues. And we also work not only in schools, and I have colleagues here from the school health branch, but also in early care and education. And that is a really critical venue in talking about access to food and learning about food. And some of these things that Alistair was talking about, the farm to school approaches, can be translated to early care and education as well. Getting those kids into those healthy taste preferences, understanding where food comes from, what a farmer looks like and what do they do. All of those are critical ways to really try and promote good, healthy eating from the various early stages of life.
Thank you. So Will, she talked about strategy. So how you all at Wholesome Way, you've been on my show, right? Correct?
I have.
I probably asked you this before, so it's a great show, right?
The bright lights are blinding me, so I don't know. Maybe I'm on the show now.
In terms of strategy, how are you all working to play your part in all of this?
Well, Rose, thank you for the question, and we're honored to be here. We at Wholesome Wave Georgia work around the state of Georgia. We work through our partners at the USDA to double the program that we used to call food stamps, that we now call Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs. We work with a number of partners, a lot of which are in the room. One is Small Bites Adventure Club, which teaches children to love, like, and eat vegetables. We work with our friends at Community Farmers Markets, who operate mobile markets at MARTA stations here in Atlanta that provide that access that Stephen talked about. And then we also work with our partners at Open Hand to provide some amazing cooking classes as well, because one needs to know how to cook food. Not many of us cook now. And then also, we also work with our partners at Rataza to bring food to communities in need. Here in the state of Georgia, Rose, 1 out of 9 children are food insecure. And what that means is that children in the state of Georgia, 1 out of 9 of them do not know where their next meal is coming from. So to Stephen's point earlier, we at Wholesome Wave Georgia sit at the intersection of access and affordability. We, through our partners at USDA, double those food stamps so that Will and his family can go to any one of our 73 participating farmers markets, farm stands, mobile markets, and brick and mortar retailers, Stephen, to double the value of those food stamps. Schools are really important to us because we know through schools, if children say, I want to go to my farmer's market like Grant Park, mom will take them, dad will take them, grandfather will take them, auntie will take them. So we at Wholesome Wave Georgia work through our community partners to make sure that those locations, Rose, are open, accessible, staffed with people with smiling faces and good attitudes so that we help increase.
Thank you for that.
Access.
Lisa, we know that when it comes to the work that you all do, there's that intersection between healthy eating and healthy playing. And as someone who was both as a kid, knowing that importance, but folks need to understand not every student has access to that. And I want you, for our audience, to make this connection when we talk about healthy eating and how it correlates with healthy play.
Beautiful setup, because that's what's been on my mind all morning, and in all the sessions that we've had around how the White House has challenged us to come together and really address a big problem by 2030. And for us at Kaboom, we're an unlikely suspect. If you look at us on the surface, you know, we're focused on building play spaces, engaging communities and kids to design and build their play spaces. And we've hit in pillar 4, which is all about physical activity. And when we think about what we're trying to do at the end of the day, which is make sure that our kids are not hungry, that they're healthy, that their families are the same, that we are addressing preventable diseases, that we are addressing the disparities that affect everything, everything in communities of color. When you talk about play spaces and the work that we do, what we've grown into is really looking at wellness infrastructure. And so the first commitment that we made as part of the White House challenge was with our partners in Oakland, at the Oakland Unified School District, and with the Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, which is Steph and Aisha Curry's foundation, which is really looking at the intersection of food and literacy and physical activity. And what we have grown into is creating an oasis, like a wellness outdoor oasis for kids and families and adults to be able to have that physical activity that is necessary for healthy bodies and healthy minds. And so when you imagine outdoor space and when you imagine the work that we're doing around food insecurity and wellness and health, think about that outdoor space as the environment that encourages us to make healthy decisions. And that really connects directly to community members who are looking up and looking around them and looking for daily prompts to make the healthy choice. And so our spaces, what they're looking like now, are outdoor nature exploration areas. So imagine a schoolyard and a school system where only 19% of the boys and 9% of the girls are getting the 60 minutes that the CDC recommends of daily play activity. But imagine that outdoor space now having nature exploration areas, a sport court, a food garden, adventure course, 2 play spaces, murals all over the wall. And I'm trying to describe this in a way that we can see how important it is for our kids and their families to look around them in their communities and not see concrete, but to see things that invite them to be physically well. And so for us, it is really important when we're having this conversation to not just think about what we're putting in our bodies, but what our wellness infrastructure looks like in terms of making sure that community members have everything that they need, all the resources and tools, and that it's right in front of them so that the healthy choice is the immediate choice.
Thank you. Kellyanne, Will talked about that 1 out of 9 here in Georgia kids are food insecure. And we're having this conversation in Atlanta, but I think my question for you is there a perception when we talk about food insecure, people sort of forget about the rural community? And that they figure, oh, no, they can't be out there because they have access to all of this healthy food. But that's a misconception.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Rose. I think, when we look across the country, zip code should not determine whether you go hungry or not, right? And I think when we look across the country and think about hunger and food insecurity and diet-related diseases, we really need to be thinking about root causes, and we know that families who are not economically stable or economically secure are forced to make really impossible decisions, right, about whether to pay their medical bills, whether to pay for rent, whether to pay for food for their kids. And no one should have to pick between those things, right? No one should be forced to make those impossible decisions. We know what works. We've been talking about the school meals programs. We've been talking about SNAP and other really critical nutrition assistance programs. But we know what really works is to put cash in people's pockets. And so when we had the expanded child tax credit in 2021 through the President's American Rescue Plan, we saw that food insecurity dropped 26%. 26%. And now we don't have the child tax credit, the expanded child tax credit, and so we've seen food insecurity start to rise again since 2021, unfortunately. And that's why President Biden keeps calling on Congress to expand the child tax credit. We know it works. We know it works to address food insecurity. And so I just wanted to mention that absolutely critical to keep the federal nutrition assistance programs, maintain them, expand them, but we also need to make sure that we're addressing root causes.
I actually want to read a quote from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's office, and he was asked about why they weren't participating in that summer food service, and this is a quote from the governor's office. Don't tweet and say I said this. This is what he said. Okay. Quote, federal COVID-era EBT programs not only lacks basic nutritional requirements and sustainability, but fails to address the mission of improving the health and wellness of our Georgians. Now that was as it relates to this summer food service program. Georgia is going to continue with its own program, not getting too political, but how concerning is that to you to hear a statement like that? Will?
I want to jump in on that because we at Wholesome Wave Georgia work through the SNAP program, which Kellyanne mentioned, to provide access in rural and urban Georgia, all across the state. One of the things that we see, and I think some of you all in the room will identify with the statement, states are the laboratories of innovation. The president deserves a great deal of credit, and also the secretary deserves a great deal of credit, the Secretary of Agriculture, because one of the things that's not obvious in this school lunch, school breakfast, child discussion is our overall economic health as a country. We are almost a $30 trillion a year economy here in the United States. The state of Georgia alone has a GDP equal to that of the country of Poland. One of the things that gets missed in this conversation, and the Secretary of Agriculture deserves a lot of credit for this, is linking rural hunger, rural inaccess to opportunity, rural lack of broadband, rural lack of access to school breakfast, school lunch, to our national security interests. Many of those serving in the United States military come from rural communities. And if those communities, Rose, to your point, dry up and die, we are at a significant national security threat. So rural hunger, urban hunger, when you look at the numbers, the CDC Foundation has done some great work on this. They're all the same. Lack of transportation is the number one issue why people do not have access to fresh, healthy, local food. Lack of income, to Kellyanne's point. We cannot afford it. Food has to be affordable. So we at Wholesome Wave Georgia sit at the intersection of affordability, access, and also working with community partners all across the state to keep our prosperity strong as a country.
Yes.
So since we mentioned rural efforts, I just wanted to put a plug in for some of our CDC programs that do work in rural communities. So we have 3 different funding programs out of our division that work at the state and the county and the more community level. One of those is the high obesity program. The state one is SPAN, and the other is the racial and ethnic approaches to community health. Georgia is lucky to actually be a recipient of 6 sites are recipients of those funding. And so we have opportunities to work at the state level and then some state coordination through the University of Georgia and through those communities that are funded through our racial and ethnic approaches to health to really coordinate programs around food access, availability to physical activity, and so forth.
As we begin to wrap up, and I've been hearing this a lot, and you all hear this lack of access, but it makes me wonder, is it really lack of access or failure to deliver from the people who should be doing it?
I think it's a bit of both, Rose.
That's just me.
I think it's a bit of both, and we've been doing this work for 15 years. Last year alone, we had about 28,000 SNAP transactions of people swiping those EBT cards all around our state. And what we're seeing, and the USDA has been leaders on this, this is another point, and this is why I think this summit is so important. All of us are involved in creating the America all of us want to live in. But what we see is that if you don't have access, meaning that if you can't get to where the good food is, you're going to have diabetes, you're going to have high blood pressure, you're not going to live as long, you won't be able to come to Emory University and get a good job, you won't be able to buy that home, you won't be able to drive that Tesla, right, that doesn't run on gasoline. All of these things are connected, and when we look at our most vulnerable, underserved communities, rural and urban, Rose, to your point, they are being left behind rapidly.
All right. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to jump on that because I agree that it's a little bit of both. And one thing I want to caution us as we're trying to problem solve is it's at the center of what we're trying to fix is fusing relationships as well. So a failure to deliver implies that we're going to drop a solution down on somebody. And what we really need to make sure that we're mindful of is that I don't have the right answers for what you do with your life. But if I ensure that what's true for one is true for all, and you have availability and you have access to what you need, then we're on the right path. But I want us to be careful about thinking about things around failure to deliver, because in no way should we ever try to drop solutions onto a human being that has lived experiences that we don't know. And so how do we move into a space where we're having dialogue, where we're supporting behavior change so that people can make healthy choices?
Alistair?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I was thinking something very similarly as you were speaking. I think Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School is the perfect example of a program, a farm and nutrition program that works for the students we serve. It works for our community. It has been working. And if anything, I think it's proof that this can work in any context. But in that, we still need to be careful to make sure that we are not coming in as the ones with the one and only answer. And as we are thinking about, as a neighborhood school, what it means to perhaps replicate similar programs or partner with others, we as a school are very, very mindful of that as well.
How much community input from those in your neighborhood do you all rely on, and you invite them in to be, people say, a seat at the table? How much of that is actually happening?
To be perfectly honest, it's not happening as much as it needs to. Right now, our food and nutrition programs are serving the students who are at our school, they're serving our staff. We know that if we are to live into our mission as a neighborhood school, that we need to embrace the entire neighborhood. We need to figure out how to do a better job of also involving the neighborhood that is Atlanta. When we talk about inequity in Atlanta, it is vast. It is vast. And we need to be able to acknowledge that and figure out how to build bridges in a way that doesn't say that charter school with the resources in Grant Park has the solution that's going to work for everyone. We're an example of what this can look like, but our success is contingent on the success of Atlanta as a whole, not as a neighborhood that's relegated to a few blocks around our school.
Diane, you want to add
Yeah,
something?
and I just wanted to add for our funding programs, they're 5-year cooperative agreements. So we're working with those states and communities for 5 years, hand in hand, meeting with them regularly. We have a national training coming up in May where we're bringing them all in, all 83 of these teams, and really coalition building and assessment and really working with those states and communities in their context and their needs is core to the work that we do from CBC.
Kelly, I'm going to give you the last word, because based on what Lisa said, and then Alistair here, in terms of being able to have this holistic approach and have community partners, people on the ground, people who are in the communities, are you all hopefully that this strategic plan then does ensure that these communities are a part of the solutions what Lisa talked about and will?
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate Lisa's partnership with the Kaboom and making commitments through the White House Challenge. I think, we have built such incredible momentum that we're really excited about and energized by from the White House Conference that we held in 2022. And so we have been holding monthly calls with stakeholders since then. And if you're not on the monthly call list, please come find me or Will afterwards. We'd love to sign you up for it. But that's our way of kind of keeping the momentum and showcasing partners like CDC who are making incredible progress on implementing the national strategy. We have a rotating cast of characters from federal agencies as well as external partners like Kaboom, who's made a commitment, come on and talk about the progress that they've made. And we've seen already folks who have come on say, hey, I didn't realize they were doing this. Maybe we could partner. And so we're starting to build collaborations that are brand new, that are really exciting as well. So please hold us accountable. We put out the national strategy because we aim to implement it and we are making progress, but we learn from you. And so please come up, introduce yourself. Would love to learn more about what you're doing.
All right, Kellyanne, Alistair, Will, Diane, Lisa, thank you all so much for being part of this conversation. Good information.
Thank you.
And that is it for this panel. I believe I want to be back in a moment with another panel, so hang with us. Thank you. I saw your list, but did you everything that you had?
And Rose is right. She will be back in just a moment. Right now, though, we have a chance to hear something really special. But please give another round of applause to that amazing panel of heroines and heroes in the food movement. Thank you. Wonderful. And a big round of applause for Rose, who is doing double duty today with panels. We now have a chance to hear from 2 student researchers who are representing the next generation of food system leaders right here in Atlanta. Our first speaker joining us for these lightning talks, as we're calling them, is Sabrina Lee, a junior here at Emory University. Give her a huge round of applause as she comes to the stage. Sabrina, I have a good question for you. So you serve as president of Slow Food Emory. Can you talk about that and what drew you to that work?
Awesome. All right. First of all, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so wowed by everyone who was speaking before me. I am so inspired. So a little introduction to myself. My name's Sabrina. I'm a junior here. I study biology and math, and I'm applying to medical school right now. So a very exciting time. So I'm the president of Slow Food Emory, and we're basically a food club on campus. We have 3 main pillars. We address food insecurity, food waste, and try to spread educational awareness and emphasize nutrition. So the main initiative that we have is every Sunday we go to Grant Park Farmers Market and we rescue the surplus produce and we cook it up into free meals for cancer patients. We've been doing this for almost 3 years. It's very consistent. So this is how I kind of got into Slow Food Emory, is starting this initiative, which we're built off of, is just visiting farmers markets and realizing that there's just a lot of extra produce that doesn't make it to the next market day. So I went to the Sundays markets because the next market day for them is on Wednesday. So there I watched them like compost a lot of produce that looks pretty good to me. Like I would still cook it, but for them it's not sellable for the next market day on Wednesday. So I just asked, like, what do you guys do with it? Can we do something about it? And so that's how we started. We rescued the produce, and at first, we were just donating raw produce to a place called the Free 99 Fridge. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's an incredible fridge program. It's located in front of the North Decatur Presbyterian Church. Anyone can drop off produce, anyone can take produce, no questions asked. But when we were dropping off produce there, we realized, as I was talking to people taking produce, that a lot of people don't have access to kitchens. So even if you give them produce, there could be a knowledge barrier of how do you even cook this up. And of course, some people just don't have the means, they don't have the time, they're working multiple jobs, they have kids, they just want a warm meal. So that's how we started our Sunday initiative, is we decided we need to take that next step. We need to take these vegetables and cook it up. So now we do this every Sunday. We go to a place called the Hope Lodge. They are a free housing place for anyone getting cancer treatment at the Emory hospitals. And there's about 60 residents. I actually just came from there today. I dropped off the produce and said, I gotta go, I have something important to do. So every week, we don't know what we're gonna get. It's kind of like a cooking show. We have 15 to 20 students cooking with us. And I always emphasize this, you don't need to be a master chef to cook with us. There's a range of student skills, and it's also a fun way to get college students to learn how to cook. Some students come in, they've never touched the stove, they don't know how to saute anything. We start them out with chopping. We say, you start chopping, we have a dish idea, just chop, or if they can't chop, wash anything. And then they slowly build up. The students who have been consistent with us, some students have been there for months. Now they can saute a dish or two by themselves, and it's really cool to see them grow, especially when we have very cool vegetables that are kind of niche. So this program, it's kind of like a win-win-win. You're getting students involved. This is such a popular event. Every time I post signups for the month, and there's 20 slots per week, it fills within a minute. One time I timed it, literally 24 seconds, the spots were all filled, just because students love this so much, because it's very heartening. You get to serve the dishes to the residents there. They sometimes give us some feedback, which is also can be good or bad. But we also try each other's dishes. It's a fun time. Anyone is welcome, and we're also reducing food waste, as mentioned, and we're helping the residents there they're all low-income residents. They have to meet a certain income threshold to be able to live there, and so we're helping them out as well. And also, all of these, they're fresh produce. It's very healthy. We label all the dishes that we make. We put the recipe in so people can try it themselves if they're interested. So that's our main initiative. I hope I'm not running out of time, but our other initiative, because we have a lot going on in terms of addressing food waste, is the dining hall is a big source of waste at Emory. It's hard to manage getting the exact amount of food where students' parents won't be calling and saying there's not enough food, but also there's not a lot of surplus. So our job as students is we go 4 times a week, we take the surplus food from the dining hall, it's hot food, and we pack it up into containers and we dish it out to students and staff at the library. So we do this 4 times a week. We're very consistent, and this has been going on for the past semester. It's very successful. We have some regular students and graduate students who don't have access to the dining hall. then they just wait for us there and get the food that we pack up. So that's been very successful. And then our last initiative is teaching students who don't have the time to commit to our Sundays, is we go to our Emory farmers markets, we feature a seasonal produce such as like squash or eggplant that's kind of like most people might not know how to work with it, and we do an easy demo at the market, and we try to encourage students to try the dishes that we make, and then we print out recipes for them to take home. So the point with this is firstly to have some free food for students and talk about our club, but also it's just a fun way to get college students who a lot of don't really know how to cook that much, just a fun way for them to interact and try some free food. So our last thing that we do is we have some food events. We do like sushi, plant-based sushi making. We did a pizza rolling event. We've done chocolate truffle making. And that's just ways for students to have fun. Sometimes students just like to hang out, and then we talk a little bit about where this food came from, and we have a lot of partners for that. I hope I covered everything. If anyone has questions or wants to talk, we have a lot of community partners. Oh, I wanted to mention Rataza also has been helping us a lot. I saw that the CEO of Rataza was here today, so I wanted to give them a shout out. They've been supporting our Sunday cooking because when we go to the farmers market, Rataza has been paying some of the vendors for the produce that they give us. So that's so I said it was a win-win-win, but this is a win-win-win-win because the vendors are also getting paid for the produce they would otherwise be throwing away. So yeah, this is just a small thing that we do. Again, thank you guys so much for letting me share this story, and I look forward to meeting some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. You were wonderful. Thank you so much. Bigger round of applause for Sabrina. She's really encompassing food as medicine in all the different ways. Our next speaker for this lightning talk, you will hear from Love Lundy, who is a senior at Spelman College for about 3 more weeks, right, Love? And so please join me on stage. Give her a round of applause, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, Love. So my question for you is, can you talk about your identity as a food studies scholar?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Danny, for that question. Before I begin, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the Spelman Food Studies Program, the 2022 pilot cohort of scholars, and my friends and family supporting me in person and online today. I would also like to dedicate a moment to the genocides and horrors occurring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, Ethiopia, Haiti, and Palestine. In all those instances, food is weaponized. The private and public sectors and community-based organizations here in Atlanta need to quickly collate to provide aid to the displaced and to end federal investment in genocide. I stand in solidarity with the protests led by the student activists from the Atlanta University Center, which align with the history of our esteemed campuses. Finally, Stop Cop City is a social, environmental, and food justice issue. My name is Love Lundy. I am a senior political science major, food studies minor from Edgewater, New Jersey, and Triana, Alabama, 2 small but mighty towns outside New York City and Huntsville. At Spelman College, I humbly serve as the director of the Blue Record podcast and the Seminar Development and Community Service Committee chairs of the exceptional Epsilon Eta chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. My journey in food studies began during my sophomore year when I was accepted into the food studies program. This meant I was required to complete monthly garden service hours, attend programming, and finish the minor. The minor requires a food and culture nexus course, a semester of independent study, and 1 class in the humanities, social, and natural sciences. Finally, I felt some familiarity with other students. I had been invited to develop my interests into scholarly pursuits, something tangible and capable of change. Black food geographies, food justice movements, and Intro to African American Herbalism are the names of courses on my transcript. In those classes, I could interface with some preliminary questions that shaped my interest in food, agriculture, and land. What was my family and community's role in influencing my food habits, for example? What is food apartheid, and how does it impact the self-care of chronically ill people? I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 17, and I basically took making it a personality trait way too seriously. Why is the work of Black herbalists and food workers being shadow banned on social media, and how did white women become the authority on herbal practices? I was interested in understanding the relationship between the cannabis industry, incarceration, and land. The predominantly white legal cannabis industry made upward of $20 billion in 2022, yet the carceral system received an influx of 250,000, mostly black and brown convicts for marijuana possession and sales in the same year. Among this internal line of questioning, the recent passing of my green thumb Uncle Freddie Lee Lundy and grandmother Emma Lou Fletcher had me questioning my purpose in life. The program is interdisciplinary, and so are my thoughts. As soon as the prospect of food studies entered my purview, I understood that I was destined for this course of study. My time as a food studies scholar has shaped my Spelman experience. I've been privileged to travel to culture-rich places like Sapelo Island and Dakar, Senegal. I've developed research, and shout out to Maurice, I know he's here today. I've developed research skills at the University of California, Berkeley. I've traveled to farms like the University of Georgia's U Garden and earned a certification in agroecology from Agroecology Commons Bay Area Farmer-to-Farmer Training Program. By taking virtual classes and traveling to farms all over California, I've proudly led my sorority in food-focused service, such as time in the Victory Garden or packaging food boxes with Urban Recipe. I've created innovative tea blends. I've set goals for myself and achieved them, namely shadowing under the esteemed Tambra Ray Stevenson of Wanda. I've overcome anxieties and grown beautiful food and herbs in that sacred garden space behind Harriet E. Giles Hall, servicing the student body in the Lowry Institute's Mimi's Pantry. Most importantly, I've affirmed and reaffirmed my belief that I was made to serve the dirt. As I approach the end of my food studies coursework here at Spelman, new questions boggle my mind. How can I justify working in food justice movements that promote rather than implement solutions to approach food sovereignty as they simultaneously supply genocidal entities with weapons and money? How can I, as a consumer, influence the pharmaceutical, medical, and food industries to rethink the way that they do business? Should we include practices of agroecology, herbalism, and slow food? Can we promote the growth of local minority-owned businesses? Can we understand the impact of culturally relevant programming? Black and brown bodies are forcibly removed from their families and imprisoned, forced to participate in slave labor, which produces foods that their own families inevitably consume on the outside. What is the best way to approach food justice in these communities? Public policy school is the next step for me. I want to focus on Black Southern foodways because America has a habit of forgetting to give credit where it's due. I'm interested in domestic food policy because an intentional amount of attention can empower food sovereign communities to run for us by us. I'm ecstatic to delve into all food, agriculture, and land policy land issues, and I really want to know more about the intersection of disability and food policy. I'm interested in public policy school because I'm capable of crafting creative solutions to these questions, solutions that transition into programs that stimulate the economic and social growth of these communities. One day, I will open agriculture and self-care focused community centers in rural Black Southern communities, which I've dreamt about since the beginning of this journey. I know that I cannot save the world by myself, but in choosing Spelman, I committed to a choice to change the world, and the food studies program has shown me so many ways to get started. Thank you.
Nice job. You're okay. That was great. Woo! I want to thank Love and Sabrina for sharing their exciting work. It's incredibly inspiring to me that this next generation of change makers is leading the way. I'm learning from them every day and so honored to work with so many young people. So a bigger round of applause for them again, please. It's so incredible, and that's one of the reasons that Food Tank loves partnering with universities and colleges, because we get to hear from young people. As I said before, I get to work with young people a lot. I get to hear from them, and this is what we need more of, I think, as people who are working in food and agriculture systems, to listen to the generations who are going to be taking on this work in bigger and better ways than any of us could imagine. In our next panel, we are going to dive into issues of food and land justice. I want to welcome back to the stage our fantastic moderator, Rose Scott of Atlanta's NPR. She will be joined by Maurice Bailey, the president and CEO of Save Our Legacy Ourself, also known as SOLO. Tracy Lloyd McIntee, the executive director of the Black Belt Justice Center and co-alchemist of the Acres of Ancestry Initiative and Black Agrarian Fund. Dr. Kari Cartwright, the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Service, and Rafaela Polanco, a farmer and owner of Atlanta Harvest. So Rose, I give it over to you. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much for that, Danny. Well, hello, we're back again. A few weeks ago, I did a similar conversation, and I started out with some audience participation. We're going to do the same thing again, because I asked folks just to throw a word out when I asked them to finish this. Land equals, I heard wealth. What else? Opportunity. Life. Power. Okay. Land equals
liberation.
Liberation. Wealth. And two more. Land equals inheritance. Future. I was waiting for that one. Reparations. Nourishment. Wow. When you heard some of those, what people said, wealth, opportunity, power, liberation, reparations. Raphael, I'll start with you. What comes to your mind when you hear that?
Freedom.
Yeah.
Yes, freedom.
Land equals?
I said nourishment, and I think about how the land gives us food.
Mm-hmm.
I said liberation, but I would also add ancestral memory.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the land and food justice in that intersection, what do you think people often miss? Raphael, I'll start with you on that.
I think one thing people miss when it comes to land justice is the help that's needed. You know, there's that saying that it takes a community to raise a child. But at the same time, in today's society, where we're dealing with inflation, and they talk about the millennials and Gen Z, how it's going to be hard for them to even afford housing. As a millennial myself, I have been blessed to be able to be a part of a family that we have been able to gain community partnerships that have helped us be able to gain extra, be able to access land to be able to grow our farm business.
And Kari, I'll leave that question to you too. What do you think people miss when it comes to making that connection between food and land justice?
I think we totally miss out on the interconnectedness. We really have to think about how it all melts together and how we have to work across sectors in order for the land to provide nourishment and to do the things that, like Raphael is doing. And so as I think about that, I think we also miss the history. And as we become stewards or students of the history, we can become stewards for change. And so as we have more understanding, we can have a greater or more production from the land and a better experience.
Tracy, what are folks missing?
One of the African proverbs that grounds our work is, the axe forgets what the tree remembers. The axe forgets what the tree remembers. And when we talk about land justice, I feel so blessed that over the last 5 years, I've joined this fight of our elders for full debt cancellation. They have been fighting for full debt cancellation. This will be the 27th year. And one of the farmers who has been agitating, he's now an ancestor. We lost three of our elders over the last year, waiting for justice. And Mr. Slaughter from Buena Vista, Georgia, he said to me, they didn't return the land to us from the Pickford v. Glickman class action lawsuit because they knew we would be free. Land is freedom. And that's what our ancestors were fighting for, and our elder farmers are fighting for.
And still fighting.
Yes.
What if folks like me in the media, we're missing something too, because we're not reporting and we're not disseminating this type of injustice that people should be aware of? And I usually save this question for last, but I want y'all to give it to me. what do we need to do better in terms of making sure we are amplifying these stories and the work that you all are doing? Because that's a big piece of it, right? Sometimes people don't know, and they say, well, I didn't know that. I have the perfect platform for that, because y'all are doing the work. So we need to be better about that. Right, Tracy?
So when we started this journey in 2018 for debt cancellation, again, our elders had been fighting since the disastrous implementation of the Pickford v. Glickman class action lawsuit. Now, it was the largest class action settlement against USDA, and although black farmers were the light bearers for all the lawsuits that came after that, Keep Siegel, Native American, Garcia, Latinx, Women, Love, everyone else got debt cancellation except black farmers. And we were really excited to work on the American Rescue Plan Act that would have allowed full debt cancellation for farmers of color and 20% to address tax liability. And as I'm sure you all know, a subset of white farmers that received over $5 million in subsidy payments challenged the legislation, and I stopped counting after the 12th lawsuit. So it halted the program. So then we had to caucus and represent race-neutral legislation. And I remember my mentor, Lloyd Wright, who is the former director of civil rights for USDA, he said to me, you can get angry, but you're gonna have to accept the fact for black farmers to get anything in this country, white farmers have to get the lion's share and to be centered. And that was very difficult for me to accept, but it's been true. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, $3.1 billion was allocated for debt cancellation. The debt of black farmers is less than $210 million, and only $15 million in black farmer debt has been canceled. And only $250 million remains. So there's truth in that. And so what I've had to, and what I continue to wrestle with, is that this is likely gonna turn out unless the community is activated, very similar to 40 Acres and a Mule, the Southern Homestead Act of 1866, and the Pickford lawsuit, which saddens me. But I will say this, the encouragement and the faith of the black farmer. The farmers have gathered together every morning at 5 a.m. praying for justice. And that speaks to me very deeply. And I do believe that we will be victorious.
Carrie, when you hear what Tracy talks about in this long fight for justice, and you work with the USDA, not to put you on the spot, but are you hearing, do we know if there is some type of momentum to resolve all this, to give justice, because so many of them now are becoming ancestors?
Yes, we want to do better. And I talked to Tracy earlier just about the ways that we would like to do better. And I am encouraged that we are taking strides to do better. And so in that, examining equity, and you talked about how do we get media and community, involved in this, and I had the pleasure to be on Rose's show to be a guest to talk about my role is to be the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity, which is different from what we're dealing with, but it's still our organization. And so as we think about that, being certain that we just had our very first USDA National Equity Summit where we had an equity commission really evaluating the work that we're doing and holding us accountable. My hope is that through the types of efforts that we're doing, that we will make strides. We know about the Inflation Reduction Act, and we hope that that will help in terms of recognizing the suffering that our ancestors have been through and leveraging the playing field, because it's so important. And so the efforts that we're making, again, on my side with our programs may be a bit different, but overall, I'm seeing this push toward equity. And even, again, having this role of the Director of Nutrition Security and Health Equity is so important for me to do the work and to encourage the entire organization to do the work so that we're hopeful about the strides.
And I want to stay with you for a moment, Kari, because I think when we hear that word equity, sometimes people, it's just me, everybody's going to be equal. No, there's a difference. with inequality and equity. And I want to give you an opportunity to take a moment then to talk about the work that you are specifically working in with that equity piece.
Okay, and so as we look at health equity and defining health equity, it's meaning that everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. And the goal of this, as we're working toward the White House goals for the recent conference on hunger, nutrition, and health, the goals are bold: to end hunger, and I was just impressed by that the first day, to end hunger, to improve nutrition and physical activity, and to reduce diet-related diseases and disparities by 2030. So Black and brown folks have been disproportionately diagnosed with diet-related disease, and we really want to make strides toward that. So then coming back to the beginning of my title, nutrition security, it's a shift from the decades of work that we've been doing on food insecurity, which is not lost. That is very important. We want for people to have food, but nutrition security is defined as everyone in our country having consistent and equitable access to healthy, safe, and affordable food that is consistent or that is optimal for their health and well-being. And so as you think about that, think about the role that farmers play in that and for our communities and all the work that we're doing. And so many of the strides that I'm doing is I'm working to advance those goals at the White House, but also working as a proponent, promoting the work that we're doing in our programs. Like with WIC, we just had new proposed meals to increase the fruit and vegetable allocation for our mothers who are involved in the WIC program, improving SNAP and making sure that our SNAP participants can order food online and order it with dignity and have those conveniences.
Rafaela, in terms of what Tracy was talking about, our ancestors, those farmers who've been fighting for so long, your organization, you also are working with the next generation, the future. And when we first had our conversation just a few weeks ago, I received so many emails, people saying, wow, when I think of farming, I think I got to go way down South Georgia. But you all are sort of bucking that sort of perception, saying, look, no, there is land here in our region, but my question is, how challenging is it to acquire land just before you get to the other initiatives in your program?
Yes, definitely. It has been a struggle to afford land, especially in the urban area of Atlanta. When we started our farm business, we were actually down in rural Georgia. We were down in middle Georgia, about 3 hours south of Atlanta. And we were just traveling 60 hours a week to sell our produce to Atlanta. And it just became ridiculous. And so over time, Atlanta Harvest actually came up for sale. And we were able to purchase Atlanta Harvest, and at that time, it was just a 1-acre farm in Decatur. There were some issues with the land. It wasn't producing good crop. And we saw an opportunity in Jonesboro, which is right outside of Atlanta. We were working with someone who gave us an opportunity to rent the land, and we had brought tons of dirt in. We started planting. Things were growing great. Unfortunately, the person we were renting from decided to renege on the contract. And we were wondering, what are we going to do? And we looked and we applied to different programs that people said, you guys should get in. You have made a name for yourself. This is a no-brainer. We didn't get into these programs. And it was actually through community partnerships, other nonprofit organizations within Atlanta that saw the work we were doing and who were determined to help us continue our work, that we were able to purchase land in Ellenwood, Georgia. We were able to obtain a 25-acre farm right outside of Atlanta. And the funny thing even about that story, I wouldn't say it's funny, but interesting, was that the man that we purchased the farm from, he had said for years, developers were coming to him, offering him so much money. And he said, no, I zoned this land agriculture. I want to keep it zoned agriculture. And he said, I put fruit trees on the land, I put apple trees, I put a muscadine vine. He said, when I pass away, I want my children to be able to come to that land and still see those fruit trees there, still see that muscadine vine there. And we, over a course of a year, built a relationship with him. And he said, you know what? you guys are the right people for me to sell this land to, because I know that you will take care of this land the way I would want it to be taken care of.
Wow, wow. I'm curious, those programs that you didn't qualify for, were they federal or state programs? I'm just curious.
Yes, they were federal programs. And so earlier this year, or actually started late last year, there was that, it's called the DFAT program. There was a discrimination financial assistance program through the USDA for farmers who were historically denied opportunities to these federal and state programs. There was a grant available, and so we applied for the grant, and it was specifically for minority farmers who were discriminated against. And we pray that there is some good results from that program.
Tracy, let me come back to you, because when you hear Rafaela's journey with the harvest here, and that is she was denied, they didn't qualify for some of these programs, but this problem is systemic. It's still happening. So when we talk about solutions, and if it's going to be this, give me a dollar, holistic approach, where do we begin? Because you don't want to just pick on the federal level, or maybe you do, I don't know, or the state. If it's just a holistic approach, we still have the same problems. The new generation of farmers are still experiencing the same problem that the ancestors did.
Well, I think about the Pickford legacy farmers and the reason why we pursued federal legislation. All of the farmers that we represented in federal court back in 2018, all of their debt exceeded over $1 million. There was no way to get the debt canceled unless we pursued federal legislation. And so I think it's important. I shared some of the sorrow. One of my favorite quotes from Zora Hurston is, "I've been in sorrow's kitchen and I've licked out all the pots. And then I stood on a peaky mountain wrapped in rainbows with a harp and sword in my hand." And so one of our legacy farmers, Anthony Segue, one of 5 sugarcane farmers from New Iberia, Louisiana, he transitioned. He got his ancestral wings last December. And one of the things that weighed him down was this issue of debt. The debt on his farm grew from, it was 5 brothers, $500,000 to $1.6 million, right, over this 27-year odyssey. Last year, after we demonstrated in front of the White House with our elder farmers, they learned that the debt was canceled. So all the farmers that we represented in federal court, many of them, all of them from Georgia, received full debt cancellation. But the vast majority are in debt. And so even when we talk about reparations, how can you make one of the elder farmers whole when their actual damages exceeds $1 million? Philanthropy can't meet that. And so that's why we were so hopeful about the 22007, which again, it's important. Those 2 equity provisions were from the suffering of Black farmers. And so one of the things one of the elders says, Bernice Atchison, she says, vultures don't eat before lions. And so oftentimes what happens is that you have these programs and everyone is eating except our older Black farmers who have remained in debt and have not received a payment yet. So it's quite a conundrum. I would be remiss if I didn't address the issue of Secretary Vilsack refusing to release the racial demographics of the recipients of the debt cancellation and the discrimination payments. Now, if you recall, in 2020, President Trump, under his administration, less than 0.01% of the COVID relief monies went to Black farmers. Now, we don't know. There's no accountability. And it's a sad place to be, particularly when we know how devoted the Black community is to the Democratic Party and who delivered the White House.
Carrie, when it comes to initiatives then that are working, and you just heard, we heard a whole lot there. We know it's not working, but when it comes to initiatives that are working, what do you want to highlight with the work that you all are doing? I mean, I know you have the My Plate initiative, but the journalist in me really wants to continue on with what Tracy just said. Is probably not fair, but I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about what is working and.
Right, so many of the things that the programs that we're working on, for example, with our SNAP participation, with our WIC program, in the last decade, we've seen increases in WIC that we haven't seen in decades. And so we know that women, infant and children are participants in WIC are healthier, that we have fewer premature births, we have fewer infant deaths. We know they are eating healthier, having more fruits and vegetables. We know that our SNAP participants are able to have access to more fruits and vegetables. So we are helping many Americans meet those needs, and I think that is so, so important.
Are you all able to work with providers like what Rafaela is doing, but also beyond just providing that service, moving people out of that state, perhaps, and I don't know all their initiatives, that can get people into what Rafaela and her organization is doing? Do y'all have that?
So we're working toward allowing our dollars to be more community facing. And one of the things that I was able to do was participate at our new nutrition hub that is at Southern University. I was able to be there at the release. And that really puts the efforts to promote healthy eating in the hands of community members.
Are they able to use those benefits at a land facility like what Rafaela has?
Certainly. So when we think about across the board, when we're working with farmers markets and we're working in those, there are many ways that we can partner with community-based organizations and with farmers markets, which I'm sure you're probably a part of several of those, to where they can get double bucks back for buying fruits and vegetables and having those incentive programs in that manner. And my role, I've been in this role for a year. I'm a community-based researcher. And so as we are doing this work, and what I am bringing to this work is that community engagement piece that goes out to listen to people. You mentioned our My Plate initiative, where that is our federal symbol for healthy eating. But going around the country and listening to people about how can we make this federal symbol more culturally, contextually, and linguistically appropriate.
You're out there talking to people, you're traveling, you send that message back, but then one could argue then it somehow becomes stalled. Would you agree that is a challenge?
That
with
messaging.
USDA sometimes, that's a challenge. I mean, you're out there, you're meeting people, you know the folks, you with the folks, as we say. And then you go back to Washington, you're delivering all this, they have all this data.
Well, I sit
it seems like there's something stalled there.
Right, and I do sit at the table with leadership, and so when I'm out, I make it's imperative to me to bring back the stories. It's imperative to me to bring back the challenges, and that's why when I go out, I don't say, just don't tell me about the successes. I want to know your challenges so that when I am sitting in this seat and I'm sitting across from my leadership, I can give them true feedback on what people are saying on the ground. And so that is the way that we have to collect the information so things can be addressed.
But I think what folks like Rafaela, they're doing, and it's a great template. There are a lot of people that say, I would love to do what you're doing. I'm hearing all these challenges. It would be great. I think you mentioned philanthropy can't cover everything, but you are this model, this template. But what will you tell people about the struggles that it took to get y'all where you are? You don't want to discourage them, obviously. Yeah. You want to help them, and that's what y'all are trying to do. Get people today. Farming it's sexy, it's cool. You can do, but put that on a shirt. But you told me a while ago, you said you do this because it's needed and it's a love and it's a passion for you as well. And helping other people on this same journey. That's what you do, right?
Yes. And, I look back on just even my childhood and growing up. I always had a passion for nutrition. And I didn't know exactly how my career would allow me to be able to really work on a ground level to help those who are having issues with being able to access fresh fruits and vegetables. And, just speaking to the other university students here, I see there's a few here. I went to school for nutrition, and, I thought I was going to do one-on-one nutritional counseling, and I realized it really wasn't my thing. And life has a way of taking you on a journey. And it took me on a journey to get into farming. And, there was challenges where I had family members thinking, you're crazy, you're going into farming? What are you doing with your life? And I'm now in a place where I truly love what I'm doing every single day, and it's not work to me anymore. And to be able to now, years later, to realize this, I feel like it's been such a blessing. And so, yes, there are difficulties. Yes, there's sleepless nights. Yes, there's days where we're like, okay, how are we going to pay the bills this month? But knowing, sometimes just going to the store and someone coming up to you and saying, with you working with different organizations, being able to provide 50% off all fruits and vegetables at your store, I'm able to have fruits and vegetables for my children this week. It just makes all the difference.
I had someone email me one time and said, Rose, why is an apple $3? I thought, well, there's a whole nother conversation in that. As we begin to wrap up, if land is this economic metric that's been around since the beginning of time, right? And we always use certain milestones, 2030, 2050, 2040. Tracy, I'll start with you. How do we begin then to gauge what the leveling of the playing field is for people of color, land justice? How do we measure that now and in the future? What does that look like?
It looks like full debt cancellation.
Okay.
All debt should be canceled of Black farmers. It also looks like currently the discrimination payment program has been implemented poorly. The application was over 40 pages. Now, mind you, there's a comparable program called the Emergency Relief Program that benefits mostly white farmers, and they receive their payments for disaster assistance within 3 days direct deposit. So why is the application for Black farmers 40 pages? Why is it that we're hearing that the farmers won't be paid until the fall, right before the election, and they've suffered greatly? I want to say this. One of the elder farmers that got his wings, Bernard Bates, his father helped settle Nicodemus, Kansas. He grew the family land holding from 250 acres to 950 acres. He started to experience discrimination, and he wrote President Ronald Reagan. Before he transitioned, he gave us his papers, and we have it on our website. And President Ronald Reagan responded in 1983 by dismantling the Office of Civil Rights. Elder Bates was hopeful that he would be alive to receive the payments from USDA, and he died. And a lot of the Black farmers feel that the policy of USDA is to wait for them to transition to ancestorhood. That is the policy, and that is what we're trying to uproot, this deep-seated anti-Black racism that is the rot and is corroding humanity and USDA and collective rise.
Carrie, how do we measure equity and justice here?
Working toward achieving equity and achieving nutrition security is so important. And again, in this role, it's so important for me to recognize that we recognize the past transgressions and we need to do better. There is change for the future ahead. And so as we are working on this, making sure that those who are eligible for our programs are able to enroll with ease, and that there are more Tracys advocating, that there are more Raphaels with their farms, that we are having the land produce fruits and vegetables so that we can achieve nutrition security. Mm-hmm. But it takes all of us. And I don't see this, I know people feel like sometimes from USDA I'm on the hot seat, but I think that I take it as a privilege, because then I can speak very directly about the challenges and hopefully be a part of the solution. Right, and so with that, just promoting nutrition security and health.
Thank you for that. Because a lot of folks won't acknowledge that. Raphael, I'll give you the last word. What does this look like in terms of equity and land justice?
Yeah, what it looks like is us working together. Everyone pooling their resources, and being able to come together and see that if we do not do this, our future generations may not be able to access land. They may not be able to grow fresh fruits and vegetables in their backyards. We may have young children who still think fruits and vegetables come from the grocery store and not from a farm in the dirt. And so it takes a community, a nation, to come together.
All right. Thank you. Rafaela, Kari, Tracy, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bigger round of applause for that powerful panel of amazing women. Our next session is going to discuss ways that the private sector may help increase access to healthy and delicious food for eaters of all kinds. Before we delve into this topic, I'm excited to play a video from U.S. Congressmember Sanford D. Bishop Jr., who represents Georgia's 2nd Congressional District. While the video plays, I'd like to invite our next speaker to the stage, Fidel Bauchio, the CEO and co-founder of Bon Appetit Management Company, to join me on stage. Enjoy the video.
I want to thank Emory University, Spelman College, and the Food Tank for this opportunity to address you today. I know you've heard the hunger statistics for the state of Georgia. In my district, the situation is even more alarming. 1 in 7 Middle and Southwest Georgians, including 1 in 4 children, face hunger. I believe in Matthew 25, which tells us that we must take care of the least of these. That's why I've always and will continue to champion for the full funding of SNAP and WIC. These vital programs, along with our school meals and other nutrition programs, help ensure food and nutrition security for people all across the country. In fact, an investment in food access is an investment in the future of our country, and we want our future to be strong. Thank you for the collective work that you do and the insights you are sharing. This event is critical to solving the food and health challenges facing us today. It will take all of us, policymakers, farmers, nonprofits, the private sector, and consumers, to make food and health care more accessible and affordable to all Americans.
Thanks to the Congress member. We're excited that he could share that video with us. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk to you and learn a little bit more about the company. And I think for folks who may not be familiar, what does Bon Appetit do?
Hi, Danny.
Hey.
It's nice to be with all of you today. Before I tell you a little bit about Bon Appetit, I got to tell you that I sat here for the last few hours, and all of you have warmed my heart. 39 years ago, when I started Bon Appetit, I felt like the Lone Ranger. I felt like I was the only one talking about food and sustainability and farmers and all that. And I got to tell you, I was alone. If you think about 1985, it's probably before some of you were born. Nobody talked about food like this anymore. And so what you're doing today is amazing, and it's just, it's incredible. That's all I got to tell you. I finally feel that I have partners out there working with farmers and about access of great quality food and so forth. So let me just tell you that 39 years ago, I felt that I wanted to disrupt and change an industry, this contract food service industry, because I was appalled at what was going on college and university campuses about food that was out of a can and frozen, and nothing was cooked, and there was no chefs. And those of you that, if you were in college back then, you know what mystery meat was all about and all of that. And I thought, coming from the restaurant side of the business, I thought, there's got to be a better way. And so here we are today. Bon Appetit is thank God, a hugely successful company. We serve Spelman, we serve Emory, lots of colleges and universities across the United States. We do a lot of high-tech companies. We do museums, performing arts centers, and so forth. And so I'm very proud of what we built over the years to create a brand, especially to be able to share all of our sustainability initiatives with the world.
Thank you for that. I wonder, sustainability has become this term that sometimes means nothing and sometimes means everything. As for Bon Appetit and for you personally, what does sustainability mean?
Well, I got to tell you, Danny, it started at the very beginning of starting the company. I worked with the Pew Commission as a commissioner for 4 years out of New York, and I looked at factory farms, which we call CAFOs, or concentrated animal feeding operations. You know them as factory farms. And I looked at so many across the United States, starting with North Carolina, Duplin County, and the mess that they were doing, raising hogs, gestation crates, chickens with battery cages, how waste was impacting our waterways. And I went all over the country, and I spent 3 years doing this, and the light bulb finally went off, and I said, we can do better. We have a broken model of agriculture, which I still believe we have today, and that what we need to do is be able to source food in a local kind of way through farmers, through artisans, and to deal with protein that doesn't have non-therapeutic antibiotics in it. All of those things caused me to think about how do we define sustainability for us, so my chefs had a roadmap to be able to go and source food, which I heard all of you talk about today. And that was flavorful food that was healthy and economically viable for all, that would respect farmers and workers and animals. Animal welfare is a huge thing on college campuses today. It's probably why we do more plant-based foods than we do protein in terms of animal protein. And to be able to embellish communities and at the same time replenish if we do all of that, we can replenish our natural resources for future generations. That's what sustainability is for me. And that roadmap causes our chefs to do the things that I heard you talk about today. We've been working for years with local artisans and farmers, all within 100, 150 miles of our locations. Excuse me. When nobody else was doing this. And we cared a lot from the beginning. I cared a lot. Maybe it's because I'm Italian, I don't know. But that culture of great food, I remember with my grandmother going out and in the fields and picking mustard greens and having that with beans for dinner. It's all we could afford for a week. We did have chicken on Sunday, though. That was a big deal. But all of those roots, and you talked about culture today, came back to me as I was starting this company. And so I got to applaud you for what you've done and how you've collaborated together to create what you did this afternoon. I mean, I've been in a lot of conferences. This is the first time I've heard, and I've got so excited about what I hear students talking about and what I hear you embellishing the farmers and all of that. So I applaud all of you for that.
I do too. I think this has been an amazing conference to lift up the role of farmers. How does the private sector do that better? Because you were able to do it, right? To lift up the role of farmers, to source from them locally, to work with them directly, to have your chefs visit their operations. How can we better do that, though, overall? Bon Appetit is a very particular company with a very particular sort of mission.
I think the more we can message how important local farmers are and access to good food, the more we can message that, the better off we are. I will tell you that I felt like the Lone Ranger. I told you that in 1985, But the industry's caught up now. There's a lot of good companies out there doing really good work. And it's because of the young people today that care about these issues. When I go on college campuses, I say, typically I'll tell you that my generation could give a damn about this stuff. I can tell you that. But young people care about it, and they're the ones that are going to change the future. I said I thought we had a broken model of agriculture. I still believe that. The Pew Commission was able to go to Congress twice and try to deal with this whole issue of non-therapeutic antibiotics, where they bring animals to market a lot faster, and it didn't do any good. It was like, because the lobbyists are so strong. But I can tell you that I see it starting to change. I see young people that I heard today, and what I see in this room that I talked to, care about these issues. They care about what we put into our bodies. They care about more plant-based foods. They care about the farmers. They care about animal welfare. They care about climate change. Agriculture is the biggest issue we have, one of the biggest issues of climate change. So the more that we can think about how do we reduce a little bit of less red meat and more vegetables and fruits, the better off we are, and this world will be a better place for it. That's my answer. And I really think that the more you message, the more you guys do, the more Food Tank talks like they do today, the more companies will get this. I will tell you that companies today that start a business, if they don't have a purpose, they die. You need a purpose. And most companies that are successful have a purpose. I don't care if they're retail, if they're in the food business, they're in healthcare, whatever, but they have to create a purpose that resonates and creates an emotional attachment to consumers. Once you do that, then it starts to change. And someone said it earlier, they have optimism for the future. I do, because I think the young generation is going to help us get there.
There is no doubt that Gen Z, Gen Alpha want that story of their food. How does Bon Appetit help the chefs that are working with you tell the story of the food through your operations?
So our chefs go into we have no menu cycles, and we have no big recipe boxes. They go into the fields and work with farmers, and once we audit those farmers to make sure that they're dealing with the right wages and there's water and there's shade and all the things that are important, the chefs then will start to set up and source from them all over the United States. They know more about the farmers than I do or any of our leadership team does, because they work with them every day. And the idea with working with small farmers was, I felt strongly at the beginning that we were losing flavor on our plates. And if we could pick an apple from a tree, instead of having it, flown all over the United States, a tree that was close to the kitchens, that apple would taste so much better. And so this was not a political act. It was all about flavor and taste and so forth. Someone mentioned about taste, that it had to taste good no matter what you do. So our chefs they embrace this whole area to work with farmers and have them grow what we need to be able to source the kind of food that we need for our campuses.
The company Bon Appetit and the chefs you work with have also been leaders on reducing food waste. Can you talk about why that's so important to the company?
Yeah, food waste is a big, big issue. You all mentioned that today. We created a software program so the chefs understand that at the end of the meal, they can actually know how much waste or leftovers that we have. And we can do a number of things. We can do food recovery with that, or the more that we can, if we can batch cook, which we do, and by that I mean we don't put food out at 10 o'clock and leave it in a big hotel pan for noon. We batch cook as we go. We never use big hotel pans. So in smaller portions, so we know it's fresh and so forth, that helps to reduce waste. but we have programs in every one of our locations that will help reduce this waste. And we know immediately at the end of the meal how much waste there is and what we can do with it, so forth. The other issue is we can look at the whole array of fruits and vegetables and try to use as much as we possibly can, whether it's in stock pots for soups or things like that. So it's a big issue with us, and I think we're doing a really good job with it.
Yeah, there's been so much progress over the last decade about food loss and waste. I think in our final 2 minutes, Fidel, I'm wondering from you, you've seen so much progress during your career. You were the lone wolf, on a lot of these issues at the beginning, as you mentioned. What do you hope to see happen in the future? What do you want the young, the companies that we don't even know the names of yet, the young Bon Appetits to be doing in food service going forward?
Well, there's a lot of young people in this room, and you're going to continue this on. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I've done this so long, I'm still doing it because I feel I'm on a journey that it's still broken, needs to be fixed. But I have a lot of faith in the young people that as you start to think about building a company or becoming an entrepreneur or helping the communities that you work, live, and play in, if you can think about how do we, because I do agree that food is medicine, how do we have good access, great food for people? How can we teach people about the issues of the animal welfare and climate change? The more you message this about whether you're starting a company or you're just working in farms or working with the local farmers, or you think about it when you go to a grocery store, the more you start to think about what you heard today, the better off we're all going to be. And we're going to be better off for our grandchildren and our children and the next generation. So it's in your hands. At least I don't feel like a Lone Ranger anymore. I feel that there's a whole bunch of people here that care about the same things that I cared about back in 1985. And I think we're making progress. And so I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry I just rambled on a little bit, but I get very patient and very excited about this kind of stuff because this is my world. So
we need more impatience. We need more urgency. Thank you to Bon Appetit for feeding Emory, Spelman for feeding all of us today. We appreciate the efforts that you've done towards sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
In our next session, we are going to talk about procurement practices that can support the transition to food and agriculture systems that are better for people, animals, and the planet. So as we set up the stage, I'm going to stand over here for a few moments and introduce our panelists. So joining me for the conversation, we will have Kyle Wade, the CEO of the Atlanta Community Food Bank. Give him a round of applause. Let's keep the energy up. Kashi Sehgal, the CEO of Rataza. Kevin Holt, a partner at H&H Hospitality. Brad Nelson, the Vice President of Global Food and Beverage and Culinary at Marriott International. And Bill Green, the Executive Director of the Common Market Southeast. As they get settled, we're excited to play a video that was shared with us by U.S. Congressmember Lucy McBath, who represents Georgia's 7th Congressional District. So enjoy the video.
Hello, my name is Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and I represent the Metro Atlanta area here in the United States House of Representatives. I'm delighted to send my greetings to you all during the Empowering Eaters Summit. Thank you to Food Tank, Emory University's Office of Campus Life, Spelman College, and our partners with the Biden-Harris administration's National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. I also want to extend gratitude to Jonathan Crane with Emory and Danielle Nierenberg with Food Tank, along with their teams, for gathering us to speak about these very important issues. Far too many families in our state find themselves wondering where their next meal is coming from. 1 in 9 Georgians and 1 in 8 children face hunger. These statistics not only keep parents up at night, but cause pain and potential illness for our children. I am proud to work on the federal level to help provide peace of mind for those families and for our communities. This Congress, I introduced the Extending WIC for New Moms Act in the Maternal Health Momnibus. The early nutrition in WIC is a lifeline for new parents and their infants. This important program helps set the foundation for a healthy life, and my bill expands eligibility in the postpartum and breastfeeding periods so that support is available when it's needed most. Together with so many of our state and local partners, we are advancing legislation to protect our most vulnerable. With your support and that of food producers, nonprofit organizations, the philanthropic community, and eaters all over, we can continue to achieve our shared goals of ending hunger, reducing diet-related health disparities, and improving the health and well-being of our nation. Thank you again for inviting me to send my greetings. And events like this provide a critical opportunity to bring stakeholders together to discuss opportunities for collaboration and highlight solutions that help us define a path forward. We need your voices, your knowledge, and your advocacy as we spread awareness about the intersection of nutrition and health. Thank you, and be well.
Thanks to the Congress member. I'm really excited about this next panel. I do believe highly in the power of procurement. It's often thought of as not a sexy issue and when we talk about food and agriculture, but I find it fascinating. So I'm excited to sit down with all of you and dive into this. And Bill, I'm hoping that you can start by talking about how procurement practices can support the infrastructure of a resilient food and agriculture system. Why is procurement so important?
Well, I think Fidel really toned us up really well on this topic when he talked about our broken food system. And some would argue that our food system's not broken, it's operating the way it was intended to. But I think we would all agree that that's probably not in our best interest long term. So where the common market is existing right now is in this space of using procurement as a model for food systems change. And so what we endeavor to do is lift up small to medium-sized growers and give them opportunities to sell into wholesale markets. Many of the farmers that we work with are between 10 and 500 acres. And what we learned in the pandemic was that there were farms that were outside of the Southeast that couldn't get product to us, and we had empty shelves. So we were fortunate to have a contract with the USDA for the Farmers to Food Bank program, and we were able to deliver 15,000 boxes a week. We fed 15,000 families during the pandemic, and much of that product came from farms that typically don't get those kinds of opportunities, farms that would go away. We had Secretary Vilsack at our warehouse recently, and he told us that 2022 was one of the best years of agriculture in the history of agriculture. And the problem is that 92.5% of the farms that benefited are the larger farms. So there were 11% of the farms in this country split 7.5% of that revenue. We know that's not a sustainable model. We know farms can't exist that way. And so one of the things that we endeavor to do is provide opportunities for farmers to be able to sell into these markets. We know that farmers not only need markets, they need direct investment. So when we're building infrastructure, we know that they need capital. We have a fund that we directly invest in the farms. We've provided over $750,000 in the past year and a half to farms so they can build irrigation, cold storage, equipment, things that they need in order to be viable.
Yes, please. That infrastructure is so valuable for a lot of reasons, and one is for farmers, for a reason, are risk adverse because they don't want to invest in those things if they don't know that there's a market for them. Do you feel like you've created this cycle where they feel confident enough to continue working with you?
Many of the farmers that we work with have had market opportunities in the past. They've sold to Walmarts, they've sold to the Publixes of the world, they've sold to school systems, and what ended up happening was these farms will never be the lowest bidder. So these opportunities came and then they went. And when that happens, you lose a great deal of trust. So farmers have said, well, I realize there are new opportunities, but I've been there before, I've seen that, I'm not interested. So one of the things that we're excited about is that we're now one of the 2 distributors for the LFPA program, and that is the Local Food Procurement Assistance Cooperative Agreement, also a USDA program. And so that we have $8 million to provide food to the 8 Georgia food banks. Kyle's is one of our biggest customers, and we source from, quote, socially disadvantaged growers. That's Black, brown growers, women-owned farms, veteran-owned farms. Those are the farms that we're sourcing from, and so we're using this as an on-ramp started in 2023 up to 2025 to help these farmers, along with the investments that we're making, help them get ready for wholesale opportunities while we build wholesale opportunities with the customers that we have. Emory, Spelman, Bon Appetit, huge customers of ours. And so as we work through incremental improvements in purchasing with them, these farmers are getting ready. And so there need to be markets for them when that time comes.
That's exciting. And you mentioned Kyle, so I want to turn to him next. I'm wondering what emergency food organizations like the Atlanta Community Food Bank are thinking when it comes to sourcing healthy food for your neighbors. Because I think often what food banks have been criticized is, there's a lot of processed food, there's not the healthy, fresh, and other delicious food available.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Our food bank, we're one of the larger food banks in the country. We're now within the Feeding America network, the 5th largest food bank in the country. And we're serving a tremendous number of people. The need for food assistance across the country right now has risen dramatically as a result of the impact of inflation over the last 2 years. We're serving 40% more people today than we did just 2 years ago. About 230,000 households every month, more than 11% of the population, are accessing food from food pantries across our region. 11% of the population. And so as we think about that level of demand, we've really had to build a sourcing machine to respond to that level of demand and have quadrupled the volume of food we distribute out into the community over the last decade. This year we'll distribute about 125 million pounds of food. As we've grown, we've also recognized the disproportionate impact in the communities that we serve of diet-related disease like heart disease and diabetes, et cetera. And we've worked really hard to drive the growth of our sourcing with more healthy options for the folks that we're serving. So today, the food bank, more than 60% of the product that we distribute is either fresh or frozen. This year, our largest product category will be fresh produce, and we'll distribute about 35 million pounds of fresh produce this year, which is more than a quarter of our total volume. And alongside that, we distribute a lot of animal protein, dairy products, et cetera. And so combining just food access with healthy access is a huge part of the way we think about our future. It's a huge part of what our neighbors need and deserve. And we have to think comprehensively about where we get that product from. We've got to partner with big industrial companies like grocery stores and large growers. And from an equity lens, we've got to work with smaller growers to ensure that we've got a robust mix of product that's available for our neighbors.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up frozen foods, which maybe we can talk about later because I think they're so important to this equation. But Brad and Kevin, if I can turn to you, both big representatives of the private sector, but you have so much power to leverage purchasing power. And really commit to sustainability, commit to farmers and a diverse group of farmers. I wonder how you both sort of look at that. And I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Well, thank you for having me. H&H Hospitality is a food and beverage operator at the airport. And so we operate a number of businesses from restaurants to full-service restaurants, fast casual to bars. And, while different concepts of food don't always allow the flexibility to choose where you source from, when we can, we should. And it's something that, I'll go back from this conference more motivated to make sure that we are looking at all of our local options to make a difference in procurement. The one time that I think that the largest example, I think, in Atlanta at the airport that we've made a significant impact in local sourcing is H&F Bread Company. Has anyone ever heard of H&F Burger in Pond City Market? Well, their first restaurant was on Peachtree over a decade ago. And the burger was just a feature. It was a 10 o'clock thing. They started saying, we'll do 10 burgers a night, 20 burgers a night. And they want to make them really special burgers. And they ended up making the bread in-house because they couldn't source a great bread. And the bread was so good that other restaurants started to ask them, hey, can we buy some of your bread? And it took off around the city from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant, and it eventually got in the airport. So there's one restaurant that was doing 20 buns a night was now serving tens of thousands of all types of bread going to the airport. And what we learned from that instance was that many times people will say local is more expensive and it comes at the cost of profits. But we ended up finding a better product at a better cost and supporting a local business in doing so. And that was just one good example of how local was actually a really good business.
It's a great example. Brad?
So I think along the same lines, we are a large hotel company. Obviously, we've got thousands of hotels around the world. And I look at procurement as really the connection with the community. Every hotel is a part of the community. Every hotel has family members that are coming in to visit locals that live there and employees that are from that area. And the products and produce and whatnot that is produced in that area is often and usually featured in our restaurants. Our structure is not a series of corporately controlled restaurants as much as it's kind of corporately controlled strategies of what each one of these multi-brands that we have. We've got 30 brands across all different businesses, not just hospitality and lodging. But I think of procurement as the way in which we can actually remain connected and also establish a connection to the community by which people are visiting, so they have that sense of place. And I think that's one of the most important things in food and beverage, particularly in travel. And today's traveler is not looking to bring back the tchotchke to put on the wall and say, I was there. They actually are bringing back images on their iPhones of experiences they had and talking about the things that they saw and generally the things that they ate.
Right.
So as we look at all of these amazing topics today, and I thank you for this. This is not my first food tank, and I'm just always inspired by any time that you put these together. But to me, procurement and how we actually purchase and bring things into the hotel is the way in which we connect with the community.
Yeah, and it can really change things dramatically. Kashi, I'm wondering how organizations can make it easier for the Marriotts of the world to source food that is better for both people and the planet.
Yeah, so at Rataza, Bill mentioned procurement, Kyle mentioned food access. We're talking about all aspects, both sides of the supply chain. So we are sourcing food from local farmers. We are helping farmers gain access to new markets and new customers. We're a for-profit model, I should mention. We're a B Corp. And we're investing in all the stakeholders. So because we're making money, because we are creating access for farmers to these new opportunities, these new markets, we're able to reinvest those profits back into our communities, creating a more circular economy. We really believe sustainability in all aspects of that word, not just how it's good for the planet, but how is it good for the community, how is it good for our neighbors. So we are buying this food, we are supporting our local farms with normal, regular purchase orders. we are creating these pipelines so that when there is food waste, and we've talked about food waste today a little bit, Fidel mentioned food waste, it's a big piece of the conversation. Georgia is an agriculture state. It's our biggest industry, $83.6 billion worth of an industry. And 40 to 50% of what farmers grow is not used. That could add, just in terms of tax revenue to the state, think about what that adds. I mean, we could easily have a $100 billion plus economy. And that could go into investing into communities, farmers, food access, programs that would help everybody up here, everybody in the room. But we're not talking enough, I don't think, about food waste. And it's a sustainability issue. It's a biggest piece of our landfills.
It's a justice issue.
It's a justice issue. So we at Rataza are thinking about all of these components and how we can have a greater impact with our time spent than just a one-for-one impact. So when we buy from a farmer, when we create that dollar that we pay a farmer for that food waste, we are helping a local economy. We're not only selling that piece of food to someone like Emory, the strawberries and the spinach here today are food waste, food rescue. Thank you, Emory, and bon appetit. But we are also able to donate that food to nonprofits who work with our hungry. Many of our partners are in the room today, including Kyle. We're able to create neighborhood markets with many of the partners that we have, including Wholesome Wave Georgia, who's in the room today. So we also couldn't do this without partnership, but sustainability has to be part of the conversation. Food access has to be part of that same conversation. Being equitable with all farmers needing help, I mean, they all need help. I mean, all of this has to be part of the discussion as we think about how to create stronger local food systems.
Yeah, I mean, putting farmers first, it sounds obvious, but it's something that a lot of large companies have not done in the past. And I wonder how all of you sort of look at that. You know, Kashi mentioned collaboration and partnership, but you also have to, go back to what I discussed a little bit with Fidel about trust and confidence and those sorts of things. That's relationship building that takes sometimes years. I think during the pandemic it was sped up, but how do you build those relationships?
Well, I think from the airport perspective, I mean, we're obviously, I'm in private business, but the airport is slower to react because we're in an airport and there's a lot of rules and restrictions around changing concepts. But I will say that as the public awareness has gone up, the brands that have put food sustainability, fresh and local into their purpose have done better business. And so if you look at brands like Sweet Green or Kava or Lemonade, these brands in the last 10 years didn't exist. But in the next 10 years, you'll see them popping up in airports all around the country because this is what people want. And so I think, from an airport perspective, in Atlanta specifically, you'll see over 100 new restaurants in the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and you'll start to see these fresher, more local, sustainable concepts that have relationships with local farms. You'll see them pop up, and they're going to be here for a while. And so I think that's just in the airport, we're more of a reactive facility. We're not leading like on street side locations, but it's coming soon.
That's great. Kyle and anyone else on this panel, when we're talking about foods and neighbors and making sure that Marriott's and other hospitality centers have a sense of place, we also need to be thinking about culturally relevant foods and making sure that those get into the system. How do we build those relationships? Kyle?
Sure. So I know for us at the food bank, the makeup of the community that we serve continues to evolve dramatically as the region's population continues to evolve dramatically. And so it's really important for us, as we think about sourcing and procurement, that we are getting an assortment of food that is going to be relevant to the people that we serve, that's going to be useful. The fundamental issue that the people we serve face is ultimately an economic problem. They can't afford all of the things that they need in life. And so the food that we provide, if it's relevant, has a huge budget relieving economic impact for them. But if that food is not something they can use or is meaningful given their culture, then we've just wasted a whole bunch of people's time.
And maybe wasted the food.
Well, we just moved waste from one place to another,
Yeah.
right? We've moved it from our dumpster to the neighbors' trash cans that we've shipped it out to. So we've been working really hard to understand from our neighbors what we really mean by culturally relevant foods.
Sure.
What are the items that are most important on an ongoing basis that we can, because we can't source everything, but we can prioritize the things that make the biggest difference, and then build relationships with providers that will have those items available, either donated or at a very discounted rate in a way that is going to be meaningful. We've had to diversify our supplier mix and continue to build relationships also with producers that represent different kinds of communities and that are producing different kinds of things.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Bill.
And if I could jump on what Kyle was just mentioning, and it also speaks to the previous question about partnerships. I think the thing that's absolutely essential when we're talking about this kind of food system reinforcement is something that's come up multiple times today, and that is the importance of story. And if you doubt that story matters, ask if you knew who Caitlin Clark was before last year. But now we recognize that just by telling these stories, it gets to the heart of the matter and it gets to a different level. When I meet with potential new customers and their first question is, how much is your squash? You're not going to be a partner of ours. I'm going to waste your time and mine if we continue this conversation. You know, if you ask, how much do I have to buy in order for you to deliver it to me? Probably not a good partner for us, because we are about the story. We are about the farmer. So we don't talk about the squash. We talk about Starlet Roots, Black woman-owned organic farm, how she grows, why she grows, where she grows, the impact on the environment based on how she grows. And if that's interesting to you, if you want to partner with the common market to partner with Starlet Roots, then we can have a conversation about squash. But that we have to get that story out of the way first, because that's what truly matters. So when we talk about partnership, we're talking about, okay, how can we do something, kind of going to my earlier response, for a period of years? Not what's on the availability list now, even though that's important, but how can we continue to support this and other farms for the next 3 to 5 years so that they will continue to invest in their model, they will believe that wholesale selling is a reality, and that the way they grow does have value in the marketplace.
Sure, absolutely.
That sustainable growing does have value. It has value to our children, to our children's children, to our planet, to our economy. All of these things are important, but it begins with the story, and it begins with finding like-minded partners who believe in that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Kashi and Brad, I imagine storytelling is a huge part of the work. I don't know, you want to go first, Brad?
Yeah, sure, because actually I was going to say story, and I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, what people are buying, as I talked about, is experiences and actually memories, and story is important. It is no longer just okay to sell commodities on plates and just play the price game. Now, price has a component, for sure.
Sure.
And there is a cost, there is a price to pay for the right story. So there is a premium there. But that story has to be built in properly and built into the built into the menu as such. But it's also part of the entire sales approach. You know, because, you know, we do restaurant sales where individuals come in and order off the menu, and we do sales like meetings like this, where this was planned months ago and a menu was planned, price was determined, and an offering was made. And I think as we talk about in that type of scenario, which there's so much volume, the story is really important to be able to tell to all of the attendees, not just the meeting planners, what it is that you're experiencing in the back of the room there. And as I think about catering, about 60% of our volume in the U.S. and Canada is catering. Internationally, it's more like 50-50. But I think there's such a great opportunity there. And talking about food waste as well, you know, it's great to talk about food waste, and we've been on a number of panels talking about food waste. But understand that as we measure our own food waste, kitchens are big producers of food. There's going to be waste. We can't get to a net zero. I mean, if I would describe nirvana of food waste, it's the last person in the room takes the last morsels on their plate, and we have a zero waste. But The majority of what we find is post-consumer, which as we translate that, means that it's been prepared for the consumer and has either been out there and oversubscribed, as I would say, on a plate, or overproduced for fear of running out. That's where we as an industry are really now leaning in with our sales techniques to say, okay, meeting planner, great, you got 100 people, we're going to charge you X number of dollars. It's always going to be more than you want. But we are really going to try and not prepare for 120% of your group in case 20% just show up out of thin air. We're going to try and prepare for your group. And so it really is about production quantity. Because for us, we don't have a lot of surplus, and we donate any surplus we can to food banks, but my goal is not to have any surplus that is donatable.
Kashi, a final word on this storytelling and why it's important and how you get your messaging out there.
Sure. So storytelling, agreed with everybody, is a huge component of this because it's about the people and about the humans that are connected to our food system is why we're up here, is why it's so important. And humans are at the root of every story that we really care about, right? So just a quick story to round us out. We had a farmer come to us, a big farmer, and he called me. We were 6 months into our company. He called me and said, I've got some tomatoes I'm about to throw out. And I was like, how many tomatoes? He was like, a whole truckload. And I was like, how big is the truck? 53 foot. Okay, the big semis. I was like, I have no idea how many tomatoes that is. He was like, it's 35,000 pounds of tomatoes. Who goes and buys a pound, right? Okay. So I had to figure out what to do with that. Because our model was working, our circular economy works. From the revenue that we generated from our customers, we were able to purchase the entire truck. And we upped the price of the order for the farmer because he wasn't asking for enough. So we asked him to charge us $2 more per box. We paid for the entire truck on the spot. Donated that entire truck because of amazing clients who pay us for the food that we deliver every day. We donated that entire truck to a food bank. And we fed so many people amazing, nutritious food. And that is what we should be doing. We should be able to find a way to do more with the time we're spending on these issues. And it's because of partners and conversations like this that it is happening. It's because you are hosting talks like this. It's because of the people in the room. We need incentives. We need more incentives to encourage people outside of this room to buy local. People here already get that. That's why we're here. But how do we get the people not in this room, how do we incentivize them to buy more locally? Is it tax incentives to buy more local food? What is it? You know, what is it going to take for people to spend more and divert those truckloads of tomatoes that are getting thrown out every day?
Great story, great question to end on as well. Thank you, Kashi. Thank you to all of the panelists. Please give them a round of applause. Great work. Thank you, everyone. Bigger round of applause for that panel, please. Thank you so much. So, you know, this has been an incredible afternoon in a million different ways. I am incredibly inspired by all of the work that is happening around the country for sure, but especially right here in Georgia and especially around Atlanta. To help us round out this portion of the program, I'd like to welcome to the stage somebody who's become a good friend of Food Tank, and that's Rachel Forensic, the CDC Foundation's Director of Non-Infectious Disease Programs, who has been absolutely instrumental in helping to put this national strategy into action. And please make sure you stay with us because there's still a lot more to come. After this conversation, we're going to head into our breakout sessions. Where you'll have a chance to reflect on what you've heard today, the voices that we're missing in the room, and what you think needs to happen next. And then we have a really great reception with wonderful food and beverages. So, hey, Rachel.
Hi, Danny.
How's it going?
Good. It's great.
I'm wondering what you thought of today.
Oh, it's incredibly exciting. Loved it. Can I tell everyone a little bit about the CDC Foundation really quickly?
Absolutely.
I see the clock ticking, but I've found out recently that, everybody knows who the CDC is, but not everyone knows who the CDC Foundation is. And as I'm doing more work in the hunger, nutrition, health space, realizing that a lot of folks don't know the CDC Foundation. We are a nonprofit that was established by Congress over 25 years ago to help mobilize resources for the CDC. And our sweet spot is really around public-private partnerships. So that's what we do. And that was why we were invited to help support the White House in the strategy. And we were working with them to help create these commitments and these various partnerships.
No, it's amazing work, and it's all coming together very quickly and significantly, and all of these partnerships and collaborations have happened. I wonder, from this event today, was there an aha moment for you where you were like, oh, that's really interesting, I haven't heard that before?
Gosh, there were a lot of great aha moments. First of all, I really wanted to shout out to Sabrina and Love, because the future of this work is really exciting, and these change makers, if the two of them are examples of who else is out there doing this work, it's really exciting. So I also wanted to one of the things that Dr. Scott Johnson said earlier, I think is just really important to underline again, and that is, that we have the skills and the resources. We probably have all the food that's needed in order to end hunger. We just really need the will. There were a few other areas I wanted to just highlight quickly.
Please.
The importance of culture was really evident as I heard folks talk today. Cultural relevance in the food, the way that students are trained as compassionate scholars. Right. I loved that phrase.
Me too.
That's really exciting. Consumers, right? The power that we have as consumers, I think is really important, and it makes me think of just, myself and the decisions I make as a consumer. Being a smart food citizen is really important, right? But also was really reminded, from some things that Kellyanne mentioned. Not all consumers have equal access to the resources, and so if we aren't focusing on the social drivers of health, then we're really going to be increasing the disparities between those who have access to good, healthy food, healthy outcomes. It's just going to grow. The importance of community, that decisions that we're all making are really informed by community, listening to community, the importance of local farmers. That was a fabulous panel on the conversation of farmers and justice, and making sure that we're reinvesting in the communities. That's really powerful. What works in one community doesn't work in all, right? And so I think Alistair talked about it was what they're doing is an example of what success looks like. So one of the things we at the CDC Foundation want to do with all the commitments that came out of the White House conference is to help lift up those examples of what success can look like. And then lastly, collaboration and partnerships. Making those connections. The CDC Foundation, we are not here to help, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We really want to help make connections. We want to help people who maybe haven't been connected to get connected.
Right. I'm wondering what you think the people who have been here all day and the people watching online, they're probably sort of itching to get involved. What advice do you give to them?
Well, there's tons of ways to get involved in Georgia, and I wish I could just name everyone. I wanted to say that the CDC Foundation's Hunger, Nutrition, and Health work, we now have a website called impacthunger.org. And we'll welcome, would love for you to reach out. We're still building. So that's one way to find out all the commitments the White House made, and we're finding new ways to help build those connections.
And just finally, what's next? What's next for the CDC Foundation and the administration? What can we expect to see unfold over the next few months?
Well, it is important to us that we help continue to raise up these different partnerships, these commitments, but we also play a role in the accountability that folks have said they're going to do certain things, and we want to help ensure that those happen. We'll do that through tracking and some evaluation. We are going to continue to do webinars probably every few months. We are really thrilled to be able to do a convening here in Georgia later, and we'll be working with several partners that have been up on the stage today, so we're really excited about that.
That's great. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to look forward to. I want to thank Rachel and all of her colleagues at the CDC Foundation, as well as the team at the White House, for all of their very, very hard work on these issues. Please give Rachel a round of applause.
Thank you
so much. This has been a tremendous afternoon, and today's summit will not end with these conversations. Over the next 6 months, we will be reaching out to participants about an opportunity to join us virtually, to share updates on your work in the food movement, reflect on and celebrate the progress that has been made, and discuss the barriers and obstacles that still persist. And so we'll be in touch about that convening very soon. I want to thank all of the speakers and Rose and everyone else again. Please give them a round of applause for participating. I want to personally thank you, all of you who joined us in person and online, for being here on a beautiful, 85-degree day in Atlanta, Georgia, when you could have been outside. And I really appreciate that you all stuck it out and were with us and contributed in so many different ways. I want to thank our amazing partners, Emory University and Spelman College. Please give them a huge round of applause. A huge thanks to Mode Events and Andres Martinez and Jose Cardenas for producing today's program. They deserve a huge round of applause. My co-founder, Bernard Pollock, and our staff, Elena Seeley and Kenzie Wade, for all of their work behind the scenes. They are amazing to work with, and I love them so much. Round of applause, please. And thank you to our amazing volunteers from Spelman College and Emory University for all of their support. They're amazing to work with. Round of applause. And we can say goodbye to the live stream audience. They have been with us all day, and we're wishing them a wonderful upcoming week. You can email me for any feedback or comments at Danielle@foodtank.com. So give them a round of applause. All right, for all of you who are here in